How many times did you write salad while you were taking your notes?
Look, I have... When I was doing... when I was writing about the chaos phase in my notes in the last Slaad episode, and it kept auto-correcting to the chaps page.
Yeah. I kept trying to figure out what a Slaad salad would look like. I mean, we do have all of the colors.
Well, I bet when they're hanging out at the spawning stone, they're tossing some Slaads.
I'm gonna hate today.
Kyle's like, it's too early for this shit.
My biggest mistake was every time I was writing Ssendam, I would capitalize the both S's.
Oh, yeah?
So I was just writing SS a lot.
We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a thing we do.
Language is hard.
Yeah.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another It's a Mimic episode where we continue our conversation on Monsters in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Kyle, and with me today are Adam and Megan, and this episode is called Slaadi and How to Ssendam Packing.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, the panel of Dungeon Masters is going to return to the conversation on the toad-like creatures from the chaotic neutral plane of Limbo, the Slaadi. But who was the first Slaad? It's gonna be a long day. It's like that's
no, I'm asking.
Who was the first Slaad? But who was the first Slaad? When do they evolve? And how dangerous can they really be?
Last time we talked about the Slaadi, we covered the basics and discussed their unusual methods of procreating. But before we launch into our discussion on the big nasties, I want to ask, what are the biggest pitfalls that new DMs might experience when running high-level chaotic evil bad guys?
Do we roll on this?
Let's roll on
Sure.
it. Ah,
Okay.
I'm going last with a 10?
I'm a 15.
All right, Kyle.
All right. So I think one of the biggest pitfalls is not being prepared and thereby not using their abilities effectively. I know that was an issue for me when I was running a high level bad guy, is that I didn't read through all the abilities, and so I wasn't creating a well-rounded enough encounter for it.
Yeah, the other side of it, too, is that they have so many abilities that you almost have to strategize what are the big power moves that you want to get off in the first 2-3 rounds. I plan the first 2 or 3 rounds. As a DM, I know what the map is, I know who my players are, I know what their tactics usually are, and I know where I want to start this guy. And so, from that standpoint, I can bring a little bit of strategy to it instead of the players who just, as Megan says, rock up into the place and fucking...
Do I say rock up a lot?
Every time.
Great.
There are only 2 modes of movement in Megan's life. It's scooching or rocking up.
Fuck!
We're going to learn some shit about ourselves today.
Wow! I am predictable. No, I think that when you're playing a big, bad, chaotic, evil guy, sometimes you can forget that, they probably have a soul somewhere. Their motivation can come from someplace, and you're not always going to be, rude and mean and X, Y, Z. I feel like there's, a room for having a bit of a soul and having a bit of a heart, and then making sure that you remember what your motivations are. No. Because I can get lost in being an evil person on a regular basis, forgetting that, there was a reason I am here, right?
It's just too close to your natural person.
Yeah, absolutely. Rocking up, just being super chaotic evil, and then scooching on into just being a soulful, heart-filled person.
The big problem that I see with people playing chaotic evil bad guys is they tend to do the chaos is wacky and random, and you'll never understand why I'm doing this, but there is definitively a reason why they're doing. Chaotic evil does not mean they don't have a plan.
Or that they're stupid.
Yeah. I look at And oftentimes, the chaotic evil means that when you're high level, it's that you're producing the idea of chaos. It's not that you are chaotic necessarily yourself. You look at Joker from The Dark Knight. That guy goes off about, do I look like the kind of guy that has a plan? Clearly, man, where'd you get that bazooka? You rented this truck. Yeah. You had enough foresight to sew a bomb into a dude. Yeah. You got a plan. You're just promoting chaos. Yeah. Right?
You wrote a list at one point.
Yeah. You tattooed it on the side of a poodle, but you wrote a list.
The list was made. Yeah. I really want to find that poodle.
At some point, it's devolved into a grocery list, too.
It's just fun. Now I'm imagining it like a horde of kobolds just covered in writing.
and one very forgetful black dragon who just has to keep writing. Who's my grocery list?
Kevin!
It's like Memento, but he does it on other people instead. Yeah. Where's my Tuesday list? Get over here.
Is that our Camilla?
Yeah. When they don't line up in the right order, it just throws this whole week off.
Yeah.
Where did Friday go? You ate him last week.
Looks like Friday cleared up. Everyone gets the day off.
Yeah. Whereas today was actually a legitimately important day.
There's an army standing on the battlefield going, we're supposed to be fighting a dragon.
I think.
Now I'm just imagining like a very polite, chaotic, evil bad guy. Like, oh, excuse me, would you come over here, please? I just need to, mutilate your body.
I feel like Kefka would have been really polite, and he's chaotic evil from Final Fantasy VI.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Right?
Because that's to draw you in, right? Yeah. Is where that calm, polite demeanor comes from.
So before we get started and go any deeper into this, let's cut to a quick ad break.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on monsters in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you to 2 more people who have subscribed to our Patreon. I'd like to say thank you to Scott Tarzinski, and I'm going to do my best with this one, Chukwumika Uchendu. Thank you so much for subscribing. Don't forget to check your messages on Patreon to get the link to the Discord. On the Patreon this week, Jeff and I sit down to discuss the idea of diplomacy and how to get some dynamic encounters out of it. And for those of you who aren't following us on Instagram or Facebook, we're unveiling a new Undead logo, put together by our very own, very talented professional artist, Megan. So make sure you go check us out on Facebook, Instagram. I'll throw it up there on Reddit as well. And of course, you'll also see it on YouTube. Now let's get back to the episode.
So in our previous episode, we covered the creation of the Slaad through the introduction of the spawning stone into Limbo. Creation of Primus, the Lord of Modrons, who thought it would bring order to Limbo through its geometrical perfection. We also covered the red and blue Slaads, along with the Slaad tadpole, their stat blocks, and I want to say mating habits, but that feels like the wrong word. Reproductive cycle?
Procreation.
Yeah.
They're how they make babies.
Yeah. How we make squish.
Don't squish the babies.
Damn it.
And what that looks like through their egg laying and the chaos phage for both red and blues, respectively. And we also covered the control gem variant rules. Today we're going to start off by talking about Ssendam, the Lord of Madness, and the first of the Slaadi race. So when Primus first brought the spawning stone into Limbo, a piece of it broke off and ended up impaling the god, eventually becoming infected and manifesting into the first known case of the chaos phage. An infection that caused Primus to become both confused and feverish, and becoming fearful of what might happen if he brought it back to Mechanus. Primus ended up purging the piece of stone from himself along with all the infected tissue. Basically like popping a god-sized zit.
Why?
I figured it was like pulling a sliver, but like an infected sliver out. Like you pull it out, and then you gotta like force the pus out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just squeezing it, I guess.
They're doing hand motions, guys, and I don't like it.
Do you want me to make sound effects too? Yeah.
Gross.
So, in the presence of the spawning stone and the twisted influence that is Limbo, that foul discharge eventually manifested itself into Ssendam, the first of its kind. Foul discharge, you like that?
Yeah, that was the one that
Ew. David.
That is a dishonorable discharge. Absolutely.
So dishonorable. I'm gonna use that one. Dishonorable discharge. Okay, keep going.
So, Ssendam, being a being of ultimate chaos, their only desire is to see madness spread throughout the entire universe and seeing the proliferation of the Slaadi kind to the farthest reaches of the universe. And though Limbo may be its home, Ssendam has no real interest in spending any time there, instead choosing to spend its time traveling amongst the mortal worlds, seeking new and unsuspecting planets with...
Seeking new life, a new civilization.
Yeah,
He boldly goes.
Yeah, I guess, but...
Boldly goes. I don't think there's a boldness about this.
It definitely doesn't follow the Prime Directive.
No, okay.
It is infecting every planet it can with the Chaos Phage and seeing the eradication of all non-Slaadi life. When Ssendam first comes to a world, what it will do is travel the waterways in the form of a golden amoeba, seeking an ideal host for itself. One who has the capacity to summon the Slaadi to the planet. And once Ssendam has found one, it will allow its chosen victim to drink it, either through water or wine, and then slowly corrupt their mind, and make the host obsessed with the Slaadi race and figuring out ways to summon it.
Does it specifically say water or wine?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like that. That's fun.
It's very specific beverage.
Yeah, and I'm also just picturing like, hey, I'm a golden amoeba, like slurping across the floor at a microscopic level. It like to get into this cask.
No.
Like that is some dedication.
Well, when it's in the amoeba form, it's considered small.
Oh shit!
So
That's
you can see it.
Yeah.
So it's like amoeba shaped, not amoeba sized.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in previous editions, it was like a giant amoeba. It's like 20 feet by 20 feet.
Cool. It's a lot of cilia moving around and
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and the nucleus was a brain.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ew.
You're gonna have a bad morning here,
It
Meg.
really is.
Yeah.
I've not had enough coffee for this.
So, once the host completes its goal and Ssendam views that there is enough Slaad in the world to begin its master plan, it will fully take over the host and, like a disgusting butterfly, transform into its golden Slaad form, killing the host in the process and freeing Ssendam to fully concentrate on just wiping out all non-Slaadi life.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I hope he cocoons. That'd be gross.
It's basically like the Chaos Phage. Like, it
you
corrupts it.
slowly.
Yeah.
But I like the cocooning imagery.
I like that as well. Or even if just like all of the orifices like heal over and then he like peels his way out of the skin.
Oh,
right?
like Ace Ventura when he's coming out of the rhino's butt.
Yeah, like that.
What a weird...
Like
Out of all of the options, that's the one that you went with.
I was thinking of Kafka, and I'm also thinking, because I said Kafka a minute ago, and I was also thinking of like The Fly,
Okay.
right? And then you took me to Ace Ventura, and I'm happier there.
This is a happier
Warm!
This is a happier place.
And we are 5 minutes into this.
Oh my god.
Today will be a drinking day, yeah.
Today will be a drinking day, everyone. Grab a cup. Just make sure it's not wine.
So in terms of stats, Ssendam is a large, chaotic, evil aberration that sits at 23 CR, has an AC of 19 from natural armor, around 300 hit points, 30 feet of walking and swim speed, godlike ability scores, with the lowest being a +4 in wisdom and a +8 being the high in charisma. It also gets a boost in Dex, Con, and Charisma saving throws with a +14, 13, and 15 respectively. It is skilled in Arcana, Deception, Insight, Intimidation, and Perception, all of which are 11 and up. Ssendam also has resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, and thunder damage, while being immune to necrotic, poison, and non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
It's like you're fighting a sentient giant gelatinous cube.
Yeah.
A little bit. Although not that, is he giant? What's how?
It's large.
He's large.
Yeah.
But just like
Yeah.
using the word, but like just that's what it sounds like to me when you talk about it. Blah.
So it is also immune to the charmed, exhausted, frightened, and poison conditions. Has blind feet up to 60 foot, 120 feet of true sight, and a passive perception of 21. It speaks all languages and has telepathy to a range of 120 feet.
Ooh, all languages, hey?
When you hit that point, they tend to just like know everything. Also,
Yeah, it's a god.
Yeah, he jumps around.
Yeah.
Right. And we also got him in the Minsk and Boo's Journal of Villainy.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So at that point, they were all big, high-powered things, and I think almost everything in there has just crazy shit like that. Like, hey, you just know everything, or you have auras, you're doing crazy things.
Magic, yeah.
So for abilities, it has Aura of Madness, which means any creature that ends its turn within 10 feet of Ssendam that is an undead or a construct has to make a DC 20 Charisma save or suffer a random short-term madness. But if they succeed, they become immune to the madness for an hour. Ssendam also gets 3 legendary resistances per day. Magic resistance, giving them an advantage against magic spells and effects. Its attacks count as magic. Has innate spellcasting with a spell save DC of 23 and a plus 15 to hit. At will, it can cast Detect Good and Evil, Detect Magic, Detect Thoughts, Dispel Magic, Fear, Fly, Mass Suggestion, and Plane Shift. Twice per day, it gets Finger of Death and Flame Strike, and then once per day, it can cast any power word spell. For abilities, it also gets the Shape Changer ability, where as an action, it can either turn into a small or medium humanoid, and between their golden Slaad form and the golden amoeba form. The stats stay the same, regardless of form, except for when it's an amoeba form, it gets advantage on strength and dex checks, has a walking speed of 40 feet, can stop in hostile creatures' spaces, fit through gaps as narrow as 1 inch, and on top of that, it also gets resistance to all damage except for radiant and psychic, regenerates 40 hit points at the beginning of each of its turns. However, in the amoeba form, it can't speak, and the only action it can take is the Shape Changer ability.
I mean, that's fair. I would also argue that it doesn't have a 40-foot walking speed. It has a 40-foot slithering speed.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like a slugging speed.
So it's the slugging speed.
Sorry, so they can phase into that phase whenever they feel like it, or is it like
It's an action.
An action, okay.
But also it gets a reaction where it can also turn into the amoeba form and void all damage that it would take.
Yeah, so this is your tuck and roll for yeah.
Also, and that's interesting because a lot of the high-powered Slaad and everything, they already have the get out of jail free card with the planar shift, right? So that is when they start to lose, they get the fuck out, right?
Yeah.
And I assume that they always go back to Limbo, but they don't necessarily have to. And he's hopped enough worlds and enough planets that he'd be able to go pretty much wherever he wants, or sorry, but
well, in the book it's refers to Ssendam as a she, but it just feels wrong. Why would it be the only one to get a gender?
Yeah. Specifically when they get... Okay, so we don't really get into this, but there are lords of the Slaadi as well. We don't get this in 5th edition, but in previous edition, these are the ones that are so fucking high-powered that they're CR like 18 and above. They always have a gender.
Yeah.
Nothing below that does, which is really strange to me. And I feel like that might just be more out of an inconsistency in the writing than an actual like purposeful idea.
Yeah.
So
I can see that. So speaking of the reaction though, I was reading about the previous editions with Ssendam, and it used to have an ability where if you hit it with a weapon, it could just stick the weapon to itself.
Nice.
So you would have to beat a strength check to rip the weapon away. And it could hold up to 4 weapons.
Because it's slimy or because it's magnetic?
Sticky. Like it would pull stuff into it and then like absorb it. So it would basically act like an ooze kind of.
Yeah, I feel like that would be broken in the sense then like what if your armor touched it? Like then you're like
that's very much a thing that you had to deal with in previous editions.
But that's what I mean. Is like I feel like people being like that's fucking stupid and broken.
Yeah. This thing would have been impossible to fight in previous editions.
Yeah.
Well, in previous editions too, you had a plus 85 strength to pull away. Right?
Oh, okay.
I forget that the math is different.
Well, yeah. There is no bounded accuracy. There's no the action economy is fucking wild.
Yeah.
Back then, right? So like now using an action to do something is like painful. Back then it was like, all right, it's okay. I have 73 more actions,
Yeah.
so like, I'm okay. I can do
I
that.
did that on action 76.
But I'm gonna use 71 of them to grapple.
Yeah.
Because that was how grappling worked back then as well. Is you're just rolling 400 dice to maybe get in an arm wrestle.
Yeah, okay.
We should just really get rid of grappling.
No, Megan. No.
No.
We'll just change the name to Forceful Huggin'.
with the apostrophe at the
Yeah,
forceful hugging.
Yeah.
So for actions, while in the non-amoeba form, it can summon up to 1d4 plus 1 Slaadi once per day for 1 minute within 60 feet of itself, which already is crazy. It can teleport up to 120 feet, or it can make 3 attacks, 2 with its Chaos Staff and 1 with its Touch of Madness, both of which are considered melee weapon attacks with plus 12 to hit, 5-foot reach, and against a single target.
Again, that's a get out of jail free card, because if you're fighting a level 20 party, 10 death slot, or sorry, 4 death slot.
Yeah, up to 5,
Slaadi.
but yeah.
Yeah, I guess, right? So that's 1 for each player to go up against. And remember, they're CR 10, I think, right? But that's level 10 party they're supposed to go up against, right? So they're going toe to toe with the players for a minute there, allowing Ssendam to fuck off and plane shift or go amoeba or whatever. There's a lot of like, haha, you think you got me, but nope. And there's a lot of that shit going on here.
It's more of a guffaw.
This is going to be that set piece battle that lasts 2.5 hours and people are dropping and getting back up and having to like retreat to the next room, and like this is a big deal. This is one of those anime battles that lasts 3 episodes.
Oh, if you say anime battle, this would be a whole like chapter season of 15 episodes.
This
and
isn't
a
even my
movie.
final form.
Yeah. When you said that his forms don't really change his stats that much, I'm like, this is not an anime. Let me take off my weighted clothing.
Now I just assume they always have like fishing weights sewn in, so it thumps to the ground and they stand up more.
Well, that actually happens in an anime.
It's more common than you would
Yeah.
think. Like, it happens like 19 animes. It's,
Yeah, but I'm now picturing the characters sitting there at 2 a.m. sewing fishing weights into their robes, going, haha, they'll never see it coming.
I'm gonna get stronger.
So the Chaos Staff deals an average of 28 bludgeoning and necrotic damage, has a DC 19 con save for it to avoid being stunned, which can be repeated at the end of each of its turns. Yeah, but it gets even better with the Touch of Madness attack that does an average of 26, also slashing and necrotic, forcing the target to make a DC 20 charisma save, where on a fail, the target suffers random short-term madness, which wouldn't be all that bad, except if the target is already suffering from a short-term madness, that gets upgraded to a long-term madness.
Cool.
Yeah.
Upgraded. Love me a good long-term madness.
Cool.
That's really cool.
I covered its reaction already, but it also gets 3 legendary actions where it can choose to use the Chaos Staff, teleport, or using 2 actions, can use Subversion, where it forces every creature within 60 feet of itself that is suffering from a form of madness to use their reaction to attack another creature within 5 feet of themselves.
I'm always a fan of no, hit that guy.
Yeah.
And again, there used to be more of that in previous editions. There are ways to do it now, but every time I do it in 5th edition, I always feel bad, like my players, and like because the players are superheroes and the monsters are chumps by stat block alone 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Like the players just have the ability to do a shit ton more damage. So when you say, "Hey, the fighter's going to turn around and hit the paladin's going to lose a fucking leg."
Yeah. Oh, so
I know.
Yeah. That actually happened, and I think that actually happened twice. I think Terry lost a leg one time.
We've all lost limbs because of you, Adam.
well, in the game I was playing on Thursday, our druid had it happen where he had to attack a random character with his most powerful attacks.
Yeah, that's written right
Yeah.
into my freaking. I'm assuming it's a crit table.
Yeah.
It's a crit fail. Yeah.
Yeah, that was real dickish. It was just like blight.
Laser.
Well, that is because I had to put that in there because 3 campaigns ago it was you have to attack the closest person, and so they dropped their sword and slapped them for 1 damage.
Yeah.
Okay. Fuck right.
Let me. You're like.
Yeah. We're gonna redo this. Never again. You abused it once.
Yeah.
Now I've learned.
Chaotic evil. You abused it once.
Actually, I think that's lawful evil.
Yeah.
I gave you a chance to not be an idiot.
Well, then once again you disappoint.
Here we are. And there you stand.
So finally, it also has a couple of regional effects and layer actions. The first layer action forces all creatures within 30 feet of Ssendam to make a DC 20 Wisdom saving throw or be placed under the Confusion spell until the end of the next round. And for the second, any creature that casts a spell within 60 feet of Ssendam before Ssendam's next turn has to roll on the wild magic table.
Oh my
Good.
god.
Good. That is what should be happening.
Yeah.
I love that.
Madness.
Yeah.
Madness.
If the wild magic table is too wacky, chaotic bullshit, though, for some DMs, there's also a minor wild magic table that the new wild magic barbarian has as well.
Yeah.
So it's different than the sorcerer one. I would investigate that, maybe even merge them somehow.
The barbarian one, though, it's mostly positive effects.
Yeah, but it's stuff like you teleport somewhere else, like after every attack or whatnot.
Okay.
But I would have it so like Ssendam chooses where you teleport to.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I would tweak them, but yeah, they are mostly positive.
Mhm.
Like I would have one of the ones affects weapon damage type, and I would just make you roll a d10 to see because Ssendam is resistant to so many different kinds. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a good
I'm
idea.
gonna use my radiant attack. No, you're not.
Stop.
So for regional effects, it kind of works along the same vein. So any creature that casts a spell within a mile of his lair has to roll a d20, and if they get a 1, they have to roll on the wild magic table.
Mm-hmm.
And then any creatures that take a long or short rest within 10 miles of the lair must beat a DC 20 Wisdom saving throw or be subject to a short-term madness.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
All of this is fun.
Yeah.
However, that regional effect thing, if you roll a 1, normally when you're rocking up, Megan, to like the lair where you're going to be fighting this guy, like you've hunted down the big bad evil guy and stuff, you're not dicking about within that mile. You're doing a laser run towards them, right? Like it's a straight line.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have like a dungeon around it that you have to get to the center of.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was thinking. Like you need to build a dungeon. You have to put guards. You've got to put something where they are casting lots and lots and lots of spells.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, knowing that I'm trying to trigger this one, to give them a clue that this is happening, that you're close. Because that's the point of this, is I'm trying to drop these clues, these environmental bits.
Mhm.
I would have it so that they're using cantrips, so that they're not burning their high-level spell slots, but they're, there's a lot of little minion type things, so firebolt, firebolt, firebolt. And when they cast 900 firebolts, you're going to hit a couple of 1s, you're going to roll in the wild magic, you're going to make them go, oh shit, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, something's happening here. And if they're not triggering that, and that's just going to waste, at some point I'm just going to say, okay, if they don't do it in 12 different spells, the 13th one will pop off. So I don't like the idea of having these big, awesome set piece things that you can do and then having it fizzle because because time is not managed properly in 5th edition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Fair.
All right. Well, let's get into a conversation about this. Let's roll some dice.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, excuse me. Oh, I got a 2.
I got a 6.
Oh, I'm going first with a 9, I guess.
Wow.
I went last with a 10, and now you're going first with a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so potential as a big bad evil guy. I think Ssendam makes a great one, and I got a bunch of ideas for it. I think it makes a great potential slow burn with a lot of red herrings thrown in, especially since Ssendam acts as more of an influence than through direct action. I'd love to see Ssendam infecting like a bunch of different people, so you have pockets of Slaadi all throughout a world while your party is going about a different sort of campaign.
Yeah.
And each one can have its own unique leader and methodology. So, I mean, we could work in pretty much all of the stuff we talked about in the last episode as well.
Yeah.
And I could see it as a situation where the party thinks they're tracking down like a cult, but in reality, they're just following a trail of destruction that's left by Ssendam as it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's interesting here for me is that I would really take the Tyranny of Dragons storyline and I would swap it so it's not dragons, it's Slaad. It's not kobolds, it's bullywugs, right? And the cultists stay the same, but they're all like in the process of warping and getting changed. It's not hard to do that when you have a high level big bad evil guy like this at the very end. So big bad evil girl. Sorry everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. But
woman, but that's fine.
I was going with the G, the BBEG, man. Big Bad Evil Gal.
Gal.
There
I like that better.
So when I'm looking at Ssendam as a campaign villain, she's gonna fit in all sorts of different interesting places inside the actual published materials. Mm-hmm. This is someone that can tie together all of the different things that are happening in the Radiant Citadel. She's perfect for lining up a series of world-hopping adventures in Spelljammer.
Yeah.
Right? She'd be a really good opportunity to go visit Ravnica for a little while, and then Eberron for a little while, and she's just in and out and creating havoc wherever she goes. Another good one would be, so there's all of these books in Candlekeep. You're playing Candlekeep right now. Is there anything tying that shit together? Like, there's no big overarching villain. It's just Adventure of the Week, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't gotten far enough into it.
I've read it. There's no framing device. There's nothing that's... You go back to Candlekeep, you dick around in the library for 20 minutes of gameplay, you talk to an NPC, and then another adventure, right? Yeah. And that's it. Well, Ssendam is a great example of someone who's out there fucking with things just to fuck with it, right? Mm. So that you're going out and you realize that, hey, all of these things have slowly been building towards this one big evil showdown, right?
Yeah.
And Candlekeep only goes level like 16, 15, 14, somewhere around there, which means you have all of tier 4 to build that up even further, right? Mm. You can reveal that, and now you can fight some Slaadi. And so I really like Ssendam as an alternative for your campaign bad guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I like the idea that it's your background big bad evil guy that your team can choose whether or not they deal with it or not.
Yeah.
Like, it would make a really good big bad evil guy, and it would make a really good battle based on like what the layers look like and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's gonna have to utilize a lot of their brain power to be able to figure out how to kill this thing. So, but I would again have it in the background. Like, you have your main campaign that you're going through, kind of like what you were saying, Kyle, and you see these little like plot clues of the fact that there's this thing that's going to be hanging around somewhere, but you don't think anything of it until one day you see it. And then adding in now Adam's idea of the sense that she pops in and out of existence in the different areas, so like maybe you missed your chance to get it. And then it's up to your team whether or not they want to figure out how to find it. And then go on from there, right?
I also really like the idea of seeing her. If you're going to do a Slaadi campaign, the idea of your characters, like we said last time that we had this discussion a couple episodes ago, you would get infected, a player would get infected, and know they're infected, not be able to deal with it as they're slowly changing over time. We need to go get the appropriate spells. We got to go to a town.
We have to learn about this. What is this?
So they've seen a couple of NPCs die horribly. They fought a couple of individual Slaadi as well up till this point. And so they head back to a village. There's a nearby village with a high-powered priest, whatever. And Ssendam is there just razing the place to the ground. They come over the hill. The place is on fire. Mm-hmm. And there's this freaking Lord of Madness?
Lord of Madness.
So, like, in the middle, the people are screaming in the streets and grabbing their heads. They all go crazy with their madnesses and whatnot. Yeah. You're like, holy shit. And then she turns into a golden amoeba and plane shifts out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know that by the stat blocks you can't do that, but I would have
that. Let's flavor that shit. Yeah.
So leaving a couple of low-level Slaadi behind to deal with it, like, okay, shit, now what? What the fuck? And you've just dropped this hint that this is so much worse than we thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going into the quest ideas, like, I like the idea of having it not like the Slaad not being the primary objective, right? Like, not even talk about them. So I was thinking, like, the party gets tasked with, say, finding a MacGuffin, right? And so they have to go to all these different locales to try to find information on where it might be, who last had it, etc. But everywhere they go, they keep finding these pockets of Slaad. So, I mean, the party might think...
Can you imagine they just find, like, dead tadpoles for a while first?
Yeah.
Right? They just died. They went out in the wilderness and a direwolf kind of ate half of one. Yeah. And, like, you're getting the little corpse bits and the wet bits first.
The wet bits.
You know what I mean.
Do I, Adam?
Oh, well, let me draw you a picture.
Please don't. I've seen your art.
But I mean, so in the lore, it talks about Ssendam will take over one body, but I like the idea of just infecting like a little bit of people, right?
Just a small madness.
Yeah, just going in and like corrupting one mind to get them to summon the Slaadi. So maybe in one village you might have a bunch of villagers being kidnapped, right? Whereas in the next one they're actually being attacked by a bunch of Slaad, and then I don't know, something else in another one, right?
Option 3.
But because
CD.
but because they come in 5 different flavors, they're great enemies to throw at a progressively stronger party, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're like, well, I don't really have anything for proper CR12. Yeah, you do. You have 4 red Slaadi. Like, just duplicating them and putting them together or mixing and matching or giving them time to plan is enough to make this more difficult.
Yeah. So there's 3 scenarios that I would love to see Ssendam as. Like a traveling snake oil salesman going into these villages and being like, here you go, try this. And then it just ends up infecting them with Ssendam. A sort of game show host where contestants think they're winning a vacation, but really they just get sent to a Slaad internment camp.
Rough.
Wow.
Rough. Their internment camps are really just breeding
Yeah.
pools, right?
Oh, yeah,
Like they're spawning pits.
Yeah, it's a bit like a corral.
Yeah.
You'll just keep a bunch of them together.
Yeah.
Or like a traveling circus and carnival run by a bunch of undercover Slaads. And so they're basically just carnies kidnapping
God.
children and stuff.
I love the idea that they got like a parking lot outside, but it's all like new and expecting mother parking only. And you're like, well, there's nowhere to park. Oh no, honey. You need to know you're already infected.
I hate it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's my idea.
I think that there are so many fun things to do with Ssendam. I am really going to... This also gives me, as far as the quest goes, the idea... I can drop this early of, if you end up ever dealing with any Slaadi, you bump into them. Remember we were talking last time about how some of them are... Or they're mostly drawn to the spawning stone.
Yeah.
Right? But then why do they ever fucking leave? And like, it could be to go find Ssendam and follow her around and get like... She's going to be the most powerful of all Slaadi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, almost a pilgrimage, but that's a pilgrimage to find a person that's consistently moving, shape-changing, and creating chaos wherever they go. And remember, she's spawning a bunch of these Slaadi who are then going to be drawn back to the spawning stone. So like, hey, when I was born from this one, the original Slaad. I have to go back. I have to get my stone in my head, right? And then I gotta go find her again. What a weird life cycle. That is some fucking salmon spawning level shit, where the creek keeps moving, right? Like, we come back and I know we started here, but like, we're looking for our grandmother, right? I just think that would be a neat, like, the Slaadi are... Remember, they're not evil necessarily. And maybe what they're trying to do is getting you to help them find Ssendam.
Yeah.
It sounds like an abandoned child trying to track down their mom.
Yeah, but like a group of like 10 of them. So yeah, the idea of there's like 10 of them that are maybe a ship in Spelljammer, and they're just like dicking about, flying through space going, oh, we're looking for mom.
Mom!
Holding up a picture of a golden amoeba.
Yeah.
Have you seen this person?
Have you seen this?
Have you drank this?
Did you drink the Kool-Aid?
Do you have any casks of wine? Can we inspect them, please?
Can we inspect your casks of wine? Oh my god, their ships would just be full of wine.
Oh yeah. She might be in here somewhere, guys.
Oh my god. I like it. That's pretty great.
Do you have a quest?
I do. So I like the idea of leading into finding the weapon. Like, the Chaos Staff sounds fucking badass. So I feel like that would be an excellent quest for an evil campaign, to go and retrieve the Chaos Staff.
Yeah.
Like, it's simple, but like, you would have to then do the explorative stuff of like, how do we find it? It plain shit, like it moves around, right?
My other thing about the Chaos Staff is this is one of these big elemental, like, this is the item of the campaign. Remember you guys did the Rada 7 parts?
Yep.
Right? So whenever you have a big Necronomicon or Vecna's Eye or whatever it is, it's got to do a bunch of crazy shit, and it's got to be unpredictable. Like when you get it, that has to be an event. If it is the Chaos Staff, it should look like different things. It should be different sizes. It should be adapting and changing and warping. You may have seen it 3 times already and didn't know it.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Considering it's the weapon of the Lord of Madness, I feel like you would have to constantly make charisma saves against it to not go insane.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I would even say that the damn thing is sentient. Not really, but you think it is.
Oh, yeah.
Because it keeps talking to you.
Yeah.
Because you are going
You
mad.
are insane.
Oh, the flavor art in the book is great because it's like a staff with a puppet on top.
Like a marionette or like
I did like a finger puppet.
Jesus.
I hate it. I hate it
Yeah.
already.
I'm going to say this. If you're going to get into long-term madnesses, short-term madnesses, voices and heads and all that crazy shit, session 0 conversation needs to be had. You don't know what mental illnesses people have been dealing with.
Yeah,
Like,
fair.
clear that shit with your party
Mhm.
before you start making that a plot point.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. For role playing, for me, I would play Ssendam as Mad as a Hatter. There would be a lot of cackling involved, and probably speaking in oblique rhymes, in children's nursery rhymes, but switching out Slaad as the subject of them. Right, like the itsy bitsy Slaad went up the water spout.
Oh my god.
Down came the phage.
Yeah.
Wipe the humans out.
Yeah. It would answer questions with questions, and they would talk to their staff a lot because it's got a little puppet on top.
When he said staff, I pictured the Slaads. Really, I only talk to my employees.
That's what. You said staff, and I want employees as well. Look, I think that is rad. I had a real issue when I was coming up with the Slaadi episode. How do we portray that they're not evil? I mean, they're destruction, they're chaos, and you need to have an intelligent leader to kind of push that idea home that we're not the bad guys here.
Yeah.
And one of the things about it is the idea of overall destruction in general, of reducing everything back down to its basic building blocks. And this is the little piece of information I had, or inspiration that I had after we recorded the last episode, was I think that the way that Limbo works, where it's consistently changing the elements and the way that physics work and everything else around, it's getting to the basic rules, the basic building blocks, and reordering, reorganizing, and fixing them, and it dislikes order. Well, as much as life is chaos, our bodies are literally like the organs go in a specific place, the cells regenerate at a specific rate, but we all bust down to carbon. Right? And I think that that's kind of where they're coming from. Is we're doing the world a service the same way that the Circle of Spores Druid is. Like, death is a cycle, and everything has to return, and that's kind of like to the base elements to be able to be reborn again. And that's the Circle of Spores Druid. A Slaadi, and specifically Ssendam, is, hey, we're going to knock over your castle and make it all just bricks, and we're going to bust those down to their base mineral element, so that eventually when Limbo has taken over the entire play, when it's nothing but chaos, there's no order left, all of this will be able to be a beautiful shifting realm of just wild. If all we have is building blocks and all we have is potential.
Yeah.
Right?
I can see it thinking that intelligent life is an infection and it is seeking to cure the infection of it, right?
Yeah. So that's where they're coming from. It's not death for death's sake and fuck you and your good law and life, and no, we're going to reduce everything back down to its base form because that's beautiful.
It's wonderful.
It's nihilistic and dark, but yes.
Yeah, or like intelligent life is imposing order where there shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there was no life. There was no light. There was darkness. Let's get back to that. That was good, guys. Look at all the shit that came out of the darkness.
Well, it leads into like my idea for the role playing was to be like do the ADHD side of it. They'll start talking about one thing, and all of a sudden they'll start talking about something completely different. Then go into a nursery rhyme, and then do like
Oh, the stream of consciousness.
yeah. the constant different waves of thought processes. It's like, oh, you remind me of this person. I have a story about X, blah, blah, blah. Sorry,
oh my God, it's like having a conversation with my mother. Where she's talking about like who she bumped into at the fucking grocery store last week, and all of a sudden it's 1962 and she's riding a bus through New Brunswick, which reminds her, did you see that thing on television? Mom, get back to the secondary tangent. I've lost track of the original
Suddenly falls into like a Brooklyn accent. It's like...
Mom, what are you doing?
What is the point of this conversation?
I have not spoken in the last 17 minutes and you have not breathed.
Yeah.
No.
Come on.
And also it's like, oh, I'm supposed to attack you. Battle ensues.
Yeah, and then she gives up and she says, all right, I gotta go. I think my tea is ready. Hold on. The point of the story was I bumped into so-and-so at the grocery store.
Thanks for bringing that back.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Fuck. That Ssendam is my mother. Fuck.
Hopefully she never hears this episode.
My mom doesn't know what Dungeons or Dragons are, so I'm pretty safe.
My mom doesn't know what the internet is.
Yeah.
So
she can't turn her phone on,
Yeah.
so I'm not concerned about her downloading this episode.
All right.
could you imagine though?
I could get an angry phone call.
So for exploration, I mean, for Ssendam, none. I mean, its goal is spreading chaos. I think if you asked it for directions, it's just going to send you somewhere that will either hopefully kill you or drive you insane.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to locate them, I like the idea of leaving like a trail of chaotic breadcrumbs for the party to follow. So if I was going back to my quest idea, where it's not really Ssendam isn't the main plot, I like the idea of, while you're looking for the MacGuffin, maybe it has to do with the Slaad. Like the party has to find this to kill Ssendam or send it away, right? Because combat is going to be pretty tough with it.
Yep.
You could have NPCs dropping hints, right? Like, oh, it's weird. Someone else was just in here looking for like the same information kind of thing, right? And so you kind of hint to it later on.
It's hard with Ssendam because the idea of exploring and hunting and finding a lair and all this stuff is order. There was, when you're tracking things out in the wild, there's an order to it. You are following their footprints in a specific way. This is a shape changer that plane shifts. How are you tracking? Right? And it would be like her mode or modus operandi is going to change every 20 fucking minutes, right? It's going to be like, oh, we've seen this in the past. No, you haven't. She's doing different things now. Now, yeah, she's speaking in a Cockney accent, right? Just for the sake of doing it, right? And I feel like actually Dan should do the voice of Ssendam because his accent's just wildly
yeah, it's literally a wild magic accent is what it is.
I don't know, because, I mean, going back to the lore, Ssendam will wait for the perfect host, right? Like, it's not just going in and infecting anybody. It is finding someone with a power. Like, Ssendam does
Your superhero
research.
team is going to be, like, the main target almost for this at some point, right?
But you have to wonder who is the most powerful person by Sendam's
perspective.
criteria, right? So if she ends up going to a world where they're very devout and it's a priestess that's in charge, that might not be the person she wants to infect. She wants the warrior this time because no one will see that coming. We got to cut them down from the inside. We'll build a warrior cast up of, and like it could be that side of things, or she could very much lean into the political power. There are different kinds of power, and the different locations, the world she lands on, might dictate which power that is.
Yeah.
Right? So, and simply, again, when you have these immortal creatures that can just plane shift, the scope is so big that we can spend a little time figuring this out. We can fuck with it a little bit, and we can play the long haul here. We only have to destabilize the third most powerful political structure here, because then that means that the other two won't be held in check. They will go to war, and I win. So they didn't go after the big one that's difficult to get to. They went after the third biggest one.
Yeah.
And you'll never figure that shit out because her mind is wild, right?
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that makes it difficult to run her as a big bad evil guy. That's leaving clues. I ran into this problem with with the changelings in Deep Space Nine. They could be anywhere. They could be anyone. They've obviously infiltrated the good guys. But what are they up to? Nobody knows. Just random spy shit.
Yeah.
And we've got ways to test for them. But sometimes they can get around the test. And sometimes they can't. And I'm like, make up your fucking minds. Figure out what you're doing. Have some rules if we're going to have a narrative here.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, you have to, as a DM, have the logic figured out.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ssendam lays low, and I think an interesting part of it is that when she takes over a host, that host doesn't instantly gain all the information about the Slaad, right? All it does is create a spark, making them interested in it.
Yeah.
Right? So, and
that's actually good. That's the breadcrumb right there is
Yeah.
who's researching Slaadi.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who's researching summoning.
Yeah.
Right? Like who's bringing something from another plane into this one.
Yeah. We've got our greatest scholars that have been working on summoning magic for the last 2 years. We don't know why we shifted from agriculture to summoning, but we've been doing it. Oh shit, you guys are level 3 of this fucking...
Yeah, all of our crops are dead,
yeah.
but we're studying summoning. Yeah.
And I imagine Ssendam is going to planets where Slaad have never been seen.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to new planets. So, I mean, even the Slaad being there should be a little bit of a tip-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, or the knowledge of the Slaad even,
Yeah.
right? So you find drawings of toad monsters and everyone's like, oh, they're angels.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
fuck.
dear.
Yeah.
No. Interesting.
Megan?
Honestly, I have nothing else to add to this conversation. I feel like we've talked about exploration and clues for Slaad for a very long time.
And we have more to go.
All right. So moving on to combat. I mean, I think you can really fuck up a party with this guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with the short and long-term madnesses. I mean, I would probably try to keep combat as short as possible, or at least do the fights in stages, right? And kind of warm the party up, give them an idea of what they're facing, so maybe they have time to plan what it is, and give them some sort of item to help in the end if you want it to be like a defeat, right? Something that's gonna help them more foil Ssendam's plans than actual combat, right? Like, I think at a given time, if you fuck up enough of Ssendam's plans, it's just going to be go find prey, easier prey elsewhere. Be like, you know what? Not worth it with this plan. I'll come back in 100 years when you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the long view like that, absolutely. Right. So she's got time to kill. I am looking at this from a combat perspective thinking a 5 or 6 person 20th level party is going to be able to fuck up Ssendam pretty hard. Like, yeah, I can regenerate, was it 40 hit points every round?
Yeah.
But
Sure.
only when it's only when she's in her amoeba form, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Right, but still, like, okay, we're going to cast Time Stop, so she can't do that. All right,
Yeah.
then you're going to disintegrate, and I'm going to, like, and they have enough high-powered shit at level 18 to 20
Mm-hmm.
that if they're in control, if they can plan it, if they can get the drop on, if they're going to engage on their terms, even if it's in her lair,
Yeah.
they're choosing to go to her, that means they've prepped, they're ready, and Ssendam will get her ass kicked. That's how 5th edition works.
Yeah, but I mean,
However,
with the wild magic table, though,
And that-
anytime you cast a spell,
yeah,
you're going to
You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
and so that's kind of where I would lean into the randomness of it and the madness of it as well, because you're tossing all of their plans out the window when you start to add these random bits in, but you have to be ready to just fucking bail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have them gear up and think they're ready at level 16 or 17. Not tell them it's a CR23 creature.
Mhm.
Right? Just think, okay, hey, you have everything you need. You can go fight her now. And they go there and just get their shit rocked. Or they show up, and she showed up at their headquarters at the same time. Right? Went, oh. Well, fuck. I mean, kill the butler, I guess. But, like, goodbye. Right? And, like, I think that if she's coming to them, it'll be wild and chaotic and very short term. And I don't think she's ever going for the kill. She's not a combatant. She's a infiltrator.
Yeah.
Right? So
She also wants to see which being she wants. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
almost like you would always have her either lying in wait to see what strongest being comes across, or she'll go seek you out. Right?
I also think that it would be a really cool idea to have a death. No, maybe not death. Maybe a green Slaad come as an emissary. Let's sit down and have a conversation with the party and stuff, and invite them for dinner and give them some wine.
Amazing.
And then they're like, okay, you know what? We've got to do some research. This is clearly we've got to. And now the wizard's like, oh yeah, you have these tomes. You have this inspiration about how the Slaadi work, and you understand. You can go look for more stuff. They might have information at the library, and so your fucking Dans are going off to do all of these deep dives. And they're like, Kyle, you would fall for this in a minute because you're one of these players that's like, no. I can go over to the library and look up this. We can get insight and information. All the while, I'm like, you're obsessed, bitch. You're my big bad evil guy.
Here's your new hyperfixation for the next.
But at that point, the combat becomes player versus player, right?
Yeah.
And as long as your players are on board with that level of kerfuckery, they don't have to sign off on it ahead of time necessarily. But as long as they're on board with it, yeah, I'd run that. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
It would be fun.
Especially if you turn to, like I turned to Dan halfway through the last, I'm going to say month that we played in our last campaign on the case. So everyone has checked off all of the boxes to finish all of the rituals to become a mummy lord, a death knight, a vampire, and a lich. They just don't know they've done it, but you have half of the Necronomicon, so you do know. But you're not allowed to tell anybody, and you're already a vampire, so why would you? No. He's like, fuck, I see the end game now, shit. All right, I'm in.
No, I love it. I would just like to remind everybody that this bitch can fly.
Yeah.
Just throwing that last piece out there.
Well, yes. But the amoeba can't.
Yeah. And it can't swim, apparently.
Well, hold on. So this Slaad goes up in the air, flying, and then turns into an amoeba and lands on a party member. Yeah. You have been amoeba'd. And they don't take damage. Yeah. They just go squishing things.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
There you go.
That's a neat little tactic of just squishing and then all the little cilia just like touching you everywhere and then off they go.
Yeah.
Scampering away. Sorry, scooching.
Scooch. It's a scooch.
That's a scooch.
I'm imagining it like flying up, turning into amoeba, and then just dropping through a crack in the ground and just disappearing.
That would be, I feel like that would be the I need to escape because I'm going to lose this battle. So to your point, Adam, yes, at some point your team is going to know exactly what to do. They're going to come after it and it's going to get its ass rocked. So you might as well, that's the escape plan. Yeah. Is I'm going to amoeba and then slip through a crack in the ground. And then you're gone into the night.
This is going to be one of those characters that is so frustrating because you'll have to fight them about 6 times.
Yes. Yeah. Until you figure out how to like combat each issue. Like eventually you're going to have to fight it in a place where there are like in a padded room.
Yeah, and I think that I would give them like they're going to rock up to fight her and they're going to hit these madnesses, right? Or first it's the wild magic table. Yeah. So then I'm going to give them like bracelets of stabilization so that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So all right, we're going to try again. Oh shit, we got close enough for the madness. All right, everybody retreat. All right, we're going to do it again. Okay, impervious while an amoeba. Okay, how can we shut down that shape-changing shit? Yeah. Because it's not a spell. Like an anti-magic field's not going to work on this. Yeah. Right? And so every time they come, there's going to be another fucking thing to deal with.
You're correct.
Yeah. I think it's crazy. You're almost guaranteed to have a short-term madness because, I mean, if you're taking a short or long rest within 10 miles, right? Yeah. You're already halfway.
Just a little bit crazy. Yeah. Un petit peu. Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about green salad.
Let's.
Slads? Salads?
Slads.
Salads. We've mentioned them here and there, but basic what they are is they are slutty with magic capabilities. Visually, they look like a classic slimy green toad, but need a walking stick, and weirdly enough, they need a loincloth.
These are the ones with clothes? It weirded me out. Yeah.
I said this is, I guess because they have like the intelligence to know magic, they have the intelligence to know that like decency is a thing.
This is like the Garden of Eden shit. I bit an apple. Oh, fuck, I'm naked.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Well, what is it covering? They're hermaphrodites.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean...
That's just the only place they get cold.
Maybe it is just a piece of fashion where they're just like, oh, this is how I'm going to fit in.
Okay.
This is my... I've seen a loincloth once and I'm going to wear it. This is my whole personality now.
Yeah. I hate that that's the place to get cold. Because it's rattling around in my brain now that they're a cold slud.
Ew. Oh my god. All right. Where was I?
We were talking about loincloth.
We were talking about I'm trying to find the loincloth word in here. So the thing to think about when they are other personalities that they do tend to be quite selfish and think very highly of themselves because they are of the higher intelligence. They do hate losing and will always boast when they win. So basically they are sore losers and even worse winners.
That tracks though, because remember the red and the blue Slaad, like one of their only defining personality quirks is that they've got to be the toughest one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So they go like strength is their thing, and so they're in my mind the green Slaads are basically like, well, we're the smartest. So but they are basically created by the chaos phage infection of a humanoid, and then transforms. This only happens if the humanoid had the ability to cast a like level 3 spell or above, cast at a level of 3. So they can be pretty neat little beings. They also have the ability to look like a humanoid. In fact, if they are created from a humanoid, they tend to actually want to look like who they once were.
Okay, so we're doppelganger pod people level shit now,
Exactly, right? So they do like to adopt the look of their former selves. So So this would be your infiltrator and now look like your friend. You are now the big bad evil guy of your group kind of thing.
Yeah, somebody disappeared for a week and they just showed back up again acting a little strangely.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone thinks doppelganger, but no, it's much worse.
No,
Yeah.
It's much grosser. After a while, they do eventually age out and do become Grey Slaad, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. For stats, they have an armor class of 16 and a health pool of about 127. They are still similar to the most Slaad. Here they have the boosted strength, dex, and con. And you would think as a magic caster that you'd be bolstered in wisdom, etc. But their spellcasting capability is actually charisma. So they have a +1 to charisma. They, of course, are skilled in arcana and perception, resistant to the same things as all your classic Slaads, and have the same senses and all that good stuff. They do sit comfortably at a CR of 8. So this is, I think we just talked about like a CR of 23, and we're like, but here's a healthy 8.
Yeah, but these guys are so devious. This is another one of those things that you put the intelligence and the spellcasting on top of it. This is no longer CR8. They're running at a CR10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And to be fair, like as I mentioned, they are shapeshifters, which statistically means that they can polymorph into a small or medium creature. But as I said, they do tend to like to be of their old humanoid personage. They are spellcasters who use, as I mentioned, charisma as a spellcasting ability. And the spells they have are Detect Magic, Detect Thoughts, Mage Hand, and twice per day they can use Fear or Invisibility on itself. And once per day it can use a Fireball. That's all right.
Yeah.
I just thought that was cute. I'm just imagining a frog whipping a fireball at somebody. Like, it's adorable. They also have magic resistance, of course, which is advantage on saving throws against magic spells. For actions, they do have a multi-attack with their bite and claws and staff. Sorry, their bite and claws, but they also have a staff that they carry around that they can bonk people
Is this
with.
another chaos staff?
No, it's not another chaos staff.
It's just a staff.
Yeah.
They call it... This is my chaos staff.
Yeah. Could you imagine? No, that's 100%.
I cast bonk.
Bonk. They also have Hurl Flame on top of having the ability to cast their fireball. They do have what's called Hurl Flame, which is basically a ranged spell attack of +4 to hit and a 60-foot range, and causes an average of 10 fire damage, and it does ignite flammable items.
All right.
So,
does it have anything in there about flammable items that are not being carried or worn, or are you just lighting people on fire?
it just says ignites flammable items.
That is an interesting oversight, because everything else that I ever see about spells and abilities
Not being worn and carried.
Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine lighting the wizard's spellbook on fire?
Oh, fuck. Can you imagine just lighting the gnome's head on fire?
I like how it's the gnome's head.
Yeah.
We're going after the gnome's head for sure.
It's a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet child.
No, okay, so you started talking about, okay, they can cast spells, the red and blue can't.
Yep.
And I got that 40-yard stare for a second there when you're talking about fireballs. Because I'm sitting there going, okay, this is why they have loincloths. Because they've got a belt, because they have spell components.
Yeah.
They're going to need that shit.
Okay.
Right? But then, the other Slaad we're talking about today are naked, and they're also spellcasters. So do they not need spell components? Do your monsters get spell components?
I wonder if it's because they like keeping their previous form, right? It's that one little shred of connection between humanity, right? Like there's still a bit of them, so there's part of them goes, oh, I need clothes.
Yeah.
Right? But it's impossible to find a tailor.
for this bot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sorry, and I'm gonna correct. Yes, it is. It lights objects on fire that are not being worn.
Damn it!
Or
Nah.
I know. I was like,
so excited.
one part of my notes said one thing, the other was like, I'm gonna check the actual book.
Okay.
But yes. But no, I do also think, like, when you, back to your question about whether or not they have spell components, I feel like these ones would just have them because they feel like it makes them more important to have them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
They don't actually need them,
Yeah.
but they collect them and they have a spell components pouch because they've seen a wizard do it once and, like, it makes them look smart.
Yeah, okay,
You know?
yeah.
Look, the moment that you
And they
hit-
just eat them.
This is how I use my spell
Yeah.
components.
the verbal component is them belching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, that's mine.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that's right.
That's how I use my magic.
The number of belches I edit out of episodes it's impressive. Man.
You know what? I'm getting better. I try to get it out all at the beginning.
I know. I wish that I still had the raw files for a lot of the early stuff so we can make a hypercut.
Yeah.
Just a 45-minute long hypercut of Megan belching.
To the tune of the intro song.
Yeah.
The internet
we'll
needs
pitch
this.
correct it.
Yeah.
The internet needs this, guys. I need this. Mostly for my ego.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that most monsters don't need spell components. They cast spells, they do it. They've got a deeper connection to the weave.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my headcanon. That's how I'm getting past it. Your humanoids need it because your humanoids are mortal and boring.
Yeah.
And not like the gods watch over them, but they're not created necessarily by the gods.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find what disconnects an elf so that an elf needs spell components, but a Slaad doesn't.
Yeah. It's the intelligence. I just want to have it. But I do realize that we didn't, because we haven't really talked about regular Slaad so far in this episode, that we haven't really mentioned their resistances because they are pretty much the same. So just for the sake of this episode, for damage resistance, it's acid, cold, fire, lightning, and thunder. For senses, they do have blind sight, dark vision, and passive perception.
Mm-hmm.
And they only speak Slaad, and they have the telepathy up to 60 feet. And then again, these ones do have the shape changer ability. They have the spellcasting ability, charisma, and then they have magic resistance, and then they have the regeneration, much like Slaad do. So
Cool.
That
Yeah.
blindsight's a bitch.
Yeah, blindside can be a pain in the ass.
No.
yeah, but yeah, that is the green Slaad.
I like them. They're spellcasters. That's fun.
It's like
Yeah.
a cute little addition, you
Yeah.
know. It's a little bit different. Like, I feel like it's not as chaotic as the other ones are when you put, like, how they operate together. Like, that last episode, we were figuring out how the red and blue operate as, like, a united team.
Yeah.
Scared the shit out of me. I feel like the greens kind of operate on their own a little bit, you know?
Do the greens propagate in some way? Does it say anything about that?
No.
No, it's only
No,
the
they're-
red and blues.
Yeah, they're created and then they stop being green. So they just exist.
Like that's just hitting menopause.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
In my mind, green and then going into the gray is them aging out.
Yeah.
Like, they're just getting older and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe they need loincloths because at this point they have genitals and they have to procreate the regular way.
And they're like, I don't wanna.
Yeah, and then they tried that for about 6 years ago. Fuck.
This is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore.
Remember when I could just cut people?
I'm like, can we go back to that? I
Yeah.
don't want to go back to that.
Like, I'm a Slaad, but this is gross.
Yeah.
And you all do this?
Like, for fun? Ew. My Lanta.
All right. Well, let's get into some questions. Let's roll.
I want to roll. I'm grabbing this die.
Oh, yeah, because I was winning too much.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm a 16.
I got a 16
All
as
right,
well.
yeah, all right, come on, Megan, roll off.
Okay.
Megan was an 8, and then you bumped her to a 16.
I'm a 9.
10.
Oh, you're 10. Jesus, I'm not getting any luck today.
Jesus fuck.
I mean, maybe.
I would hope so.
All right.
Like, I support that for everybody. I'm sex positive on this podcast, is my point here.
Thank
Anyways, can you rescue me from
Yeah.
There's like a rabbit hole.
I was waiting for you to leave.
Just-
Megan, can you tell us a quest idea that you would have for the green slot?
Thank you.
I think that these ones do travel in packs. I feel like because they are created so differently, they would kind of seek themselves out. So I feel like they would partner themselves with like the blue Slaads that cause the phage, and specifically almost guide them and order them to create more green. So finding more humanoid type objects to like transform and change so that they can have a larger pack.
I'm kind of imagining the Spider-Man meme where they're like all pointing at each other.
All pointing at each other, yeah. But like, I think that they would, and it kind of like what we discussed with the blue, there would be one that's supposed to be like the alpha that would then, as soon as more greens are created, they would assert their dominance in some way, shape, or form. So there will always be one green that is slightly stronger than the others, but because eventually they age out and turn into green, there's this constant rotation within this weird cult of green Slaads that battle for dominance and that kind of stuff. So you might come across like a green Slaad that is wanting to like become the next strongest one in its clan or what have you, and then like your group would either be wanting to help it or destroy the green Slaads because your goal is to get rid of Slaad or what. So it depends on what direction your campaign is going to go. But I just like the idea of having a cult of green Slaads that are fighting for magical dominance.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
Okay, so at level 1, you are already champions as players, right? You're stronger than your average person. However, like the veteran stat block is like pretty beefy. There's like you're a CR3 or 5. The gladiator, I think, gets up there. There are some beefy NPC stat blocks, which means that there are a lot of champion level NPCs walking around. But it's going to be like 1 to every 1,000 average people. So the idea of having spellcasting above, that's a level 5 character. That's actually going to be relatively rare, right? It's not going to be everybody that can cast the basic level of magic. So, okay, you have a handful of cantrips. You can even cure wounds. Not good enough for these. Yeah. So I'm targeting a wizard circle, right? Or a druid circle. A group of high-level spellcasters that get together semi-frequently. They maybe have a tower that they meet in, or an extra-dimensional space, or an altar, or a shrine, or something, like once a week, or maybe they all live there, but they go about their own business doing their own research and shit like that.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to make it the thing where there's this infection, and they're slowly going to take over and affect every person there, but it's shape-changing as well.
Oh, interesting.
So
it's like a game of werewolf, but with Slaad.
Yeah. So there's a blue Slaad that is going to be like, wait a minute, I can do this, and manage to get one of the middling level apprentices maybe, who then is like, excuse me, sir, can I get you to come over here and check this out? And like leads them over, opens a closet, and there's a blue Slaad standing inside.
Yeah.
Right? And then that wizard is missing for a couple of days, and then comes back and is like, we should split up. And you guys should go down into the village and check this out. But why don't you stay back and talk to me? And they're slowly isolating all of the wizards as they go.
Yeah.
So that eventually they're getting more and more green Slaad. The blue Slaad is not in charge anymore. They're actually just like being kept in a closet somewhere.
Being used.
Yeah, pretty much. And then the green Slaadi are slowly infiltrating, and they're going to take over. And this is a point of power where from here, they can take over the entire region.
Yeah.
And there's enough of them there. So that's my big quest here is your players are going to figure out that 5 of the 8 wizards have been turned.
Yeah.
There's some sort of divining magic or something that told them this. Or they managed to capture a red Slaad and interrogate it, right? Something like that. So there are 5 of the 8 have been turned. Which ones? I don't know.
Yeah. How fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. And then they have a bunch of like red and blues in the basement.
Yeah.
And then they're slowly pulling villagers in to fill out their army to eventually unleash them all.
Yeah. Every time that you like wake up, there's 2 or 3 more people from the village missing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right,
like
because they've been pulled out to like they're in the basement of the wizard's tower, right? In this little like you said, an internment camp almost, right? But it's in the basement. They're all gagged and tied up and slowly changing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, upstairs there's one blue Slaad in a closet and a bunch of green Slaad going, the other wizards have no idea. I also love the idea of like one of the green Slaad is leading a wizard in to the blue Slaad that opens a closet and like, haha! The blue Slaad's like, oh fuck, no, I got this guy already.
Yeah.
What? Oh shit, okay, hold on. You and me? We're both? Okay, alright, yeah.
Yeah, we're fine, yeah, moving on.
Well, I like how they can just reinfect him anyway. Nah, fuck it, we'll just
Just for shit, I really gotta get it out today.
I really gotta get it out today.
Yeah. I'll take it.
There's a backlog. God damn. That's why he's blue.
I don't like where this went. I take it back.
All right, for my idea, I know thematically, they're not supposed to retain any memories or personality from their previous lives.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I would love to see one fighting the transformation. Jeff once brought up the idea of giving a low-level enemy, like a headband of intellect, right?
Yeah.
And so this headband of intellect is allowing them to retain a bit of their humanity or something. And so your party comes across it, and it needs your party's help undoing it. So you have to find like a wish or something. They're CR8, so you wouldn't have access to it yet.
Yeah.
But it would give your party a good moral quandary too. Like they find like a scroll of wish or something, let's say. Do they actually go back and give it to them, kill them, or like you keep it for themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. How about for role-playing, Megan?
These ones are intelligent. They're
Yeah.
going to be the Slaads that you actually have the ability to talk to. Like, again, with them, it would be through telepathy. But I feel like
they're starting to learn common.
Yeah, because I feel like they've been around long enough that they're kind of like, they can say basic words and basic sentences. And, like, you can actually be able to commune with them and almost figure out what's going on. But they're going to try and trick you, is you have to remember. Like, they're not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to tell you my big, bad, evil guy plan. No, they're going to...
This is actually a plot hole for me. They're shape changers, and they want to replace their original selves, but they can't speak.
Yeah.
That's a plot hole. I'm going to give them the language of the person they infected.
Yeah, that makes the most sense to me. Because I can't even, like, don't get me wrong, it would be hilarious to walk into, again, like, the church of where these green slutty have, like, infiltrated, and they're all just speaking Slaad. But that could be a clue. Maybe there is, like, maybe they did infect, like, one of the younger wizards who wasn't quite intelligent or was young, or they infected a kid, and then they did not quite have the full grasp on language, so you do get a croak every once in a while.
Okay.
I love the idea.
Oh, sorry, I'm sick.
No.
Like, you end up hearing them talking amongst themselves as you pass by the door, and it's just them, or like, every time they... Do you think that they walk into a tavern and order Budweiser, but like one syllable at a time?
Oh, God. Went right into that one.
Yeah. You did.
That is an old joke.
Yeah.
Gen Z will not get that.
You're welcome, Gen Z.
Yeah, I guess that's my inspiration. These guys are schemers. We've talked about schemers and plotters a lot on the podcast in the past. So again, they're gonna have their secrets. It is about infiltrating and figuring out. They have infiltrated and figured shit out, and you're coming in behind them and trying to. This is culty.
Yeah.
Are
It's
they
very culty.
Are they going to
magic.
try to separate your party as well at some point? Like, be like, oh, here, come talk to me. I don't want to tell all of them. I don't trust them.
Yeah,
Blah, blah, blah.
but I feel like your group would be, like, at this point almost smart enough kind of thing.
You would fucking hope so.
Yeah.
I managed to split Dan off from the party to go quote unquote investigate. He's got the most D&D experience of everybody I know.
Yeah.
Right? And he's playing a level 16 character, and I managed to just fucking kidnap him. And, well, we were carving his brain out and feeding him health potions at the same time.
Yeah.
To keep his brain alive. Like, you remember that now, man?
Yeah, my brain just like, yep, that happened.
But like being able to split the party, and you don't have to be like, oh, come over here. I don't trust the others. You just need to be like, hey, yeah, come visit me sometime the next couple of weeks. And then when you have downtime and everyone's like, I'm going to rest. I'm going to go to the bar and sing. I'm going to get my fuck on with an NPC. The mage is going to go, all right, I'm going to go check in with this guy now.
Yeah.
Right? And there you go. That's it. Right? So
Yeah.
then you pull them aside to the other room and say, okay, so he leads you in and opens a closet. There's a blue Slaad just like filling the fucking glaze, a large size. just hey.
Shit. Shit.
What about you, Kyle? Do you have anything for...
I mean, yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered it. The only thing that I really have that comes to mind is I would probably play it like a cartoon villain and just say things like, curses, foiled again.
Foiled again.
Oh, so I came up. I just Googled, and I have this is gross to me, and I don't know why it's gross. A group of toads, because you're like back to their clan or whatever. You said that a little while ago.
Do you know what a group of toads was called?
Right.
Yeah.
It's called a knot.
Ew.
I don't know why that's gross, but it is. It is
Like
clearly
K-N?
with a K.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
It
See,
is
that's why it's gross.
I know, right? A knot of Slaad.
Just limbs intertwined.
You thought you had a short-term madness before.
Oh, it's the worst version of barrel monkeys.
Oh my god.
How
I
about...
actually have a barrel of monkeys, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, we don't need visual representation.
I was just
Representation is
joking.
important in 2023, Kyle.
Okay.
Not for knots of Slaad.
No one needs knots of Slaad.
I feel like the first time you say that to your player's gonna be like, "Did you mean to say lots of salon?"
No.
No.
Also, now I really want to make a tavern called the Naughty Slaad.
What would the Slaad language sound like? Would it just sound like wet meat slapping together?
Like, yeah, but it's just because
wanna
they've
go home.
got those big mouths that are just.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I hate it.
That's gonna be fun to edit around. I'm gonna have to do some equalization on that sound.
So give us some exploration and clues, Megan.
So for exploration and clues on these ones, obviously they're magical creatures. So you're only really going to find them in places where there are, what we've talked about, where there's magic things happening.
Yeah.
So like you would have to go to a town where magic is known. You would have to go to, when you're exploring in the forest and stuff like that. If you see random magic, this is kind of what might come about. So it's kind of like how we talked about when you randomly see like a small item or nugget that you think is going to be like an ogre or an orc or something like that, but it turns out to suddenly be a Slaad. It would be the same kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
you come across like an NPC that's a magic user or what have you, but little do you know that it's been a Slaad its entire life and it's only looking for magic users. So could you imagine if you had like a team with no magic users on it?
Yeah.
Like it would be almost like impossible for your team to be like, not impossible, but they wouldn't really necessarily want to like infiltrate your group.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a fun thing to play with, depending on what your dynamic of your group is, what the Slaad would do with your group.
As far as exploration and clues goes, I don't have a whole lot of necessarily like it depends on who the original character was that they've replaced as well. Like there's a lot of pod people shit to think about with that.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out this is more role playing to watch for inconsistencies and things like that. That's how you're tracking a green Slaad.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here thinking, first of all, I had two thoughts. One, these guys suffer from the same draw to the spawning stone as the other ones do. But we assume that they're more intelligent. And so this is my thought process. We assume they're more intelligent, so if they're out in the world and they've infiltrated, this is not happening in Limbo, this is happening out in the plains, because they're looking for spellcasters, right? They're not just looking for random shit in Limbo. So if they're out looking for spellcasters, they've got some intelligence, they're gonna try to resist the draw, and then I'm like, why do I assume that they have high intelligence? They could be a warlock or a paladin or a sorcerer or a cleric, spellcaster, right? And then I'm like, where are they getting their magic from? It's clearly a sorcerer, it's in their blood. They're spellcasters because they're Slaadi,
Yeah.
right? So that cleric's god, that warlock patron, they're going to know that is no longer my guy.
Yeah.
And so, can you imagine if when the warlock patron appears to the rogue and says, "You've got a fucking problem. Your warlock is not your warlock anymore. I've lost communication here. Figure it out."
Yeah. That's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or the patron might be like, you know what, this could work for me. Or
Well, but they're not going to have the connection anymore. They're not getting like that. Slaad is now doing its own fucking thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that is that.
The warlock gets no benefit from it anymore.
Yeah. So suddenly they're not casting Eldritch Blast.
Mhm.
They're casting Fireball, right?
They're one fireball per day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's it for me today.
Yeah, you really only get one out of me
Yeah.
today, guys.
But like that'd be cool to see, like when you're fighting a cult and then all of a sudden that cult shifts gears because they're no longer worshiping, like the guys in charge are not worshiping this entity any longer
Yeah.
because they have been turned into Slaadi.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And the rest of the cult doesn't know.
But that'd be like to your point, that'd be an excellent clue on this, even for your group. Like you go into a fight or a battle and your warlock is suddenly not doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, or it's just using mage hand to slap some shit about because that's all it can do. You know what I mean? Like then you're like, okay, what's wrong with you? Like, oh, I'm just really tired. I'm not feeling really great, right? But you would have to have a good group, like a more experienced D&D group
to figure that shit
To be able to figure that shit out and be able to role play that out well.
I would do this with a sidekick or a favorite NPC as opposed to a player necessarily.
Yeah, that's true.
That's going to be a little bit more subtle too. They're not going to realize right away what's happening. But also I like the idea of you like walking up into like you're fighting a cult of the Kraken and then you get there and you realize that they're not actually summoning from the plane of water. They're trying to open portals to Limbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, well, fucking why? Well, it's because the Slaadi took over this cult. And now all of the other little cultlings, the little guys, are just like, yeah, we got to go get sacrifices and bring them back. And they're like, yeah, sure, because we're hungry. Yes, bring them back. But we're busy over here opening arcane circles to bring in an army of Slaadi, and you didn't see this shit coming.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Or you bust in when the portal is open, and you're like, all right, we're going to kill them. And like in the great summoning hall, there are just a bunch of bound cultists that are like growing the Slaadi tadpoles or the chaos phages in them. And they're all like screaming and gagged and bound and shit. And there's like 6 Slaadi walking around.
Yeah.
Right? Among them.
Very true.
Interesting.
Like the green Slaadi have so many little campaign implications. But they're always because of the shape changing, they're always going to be one extra level of obfuscation between what your players think and what's actually happening. Like there's going to be that subterfuge every time, which means I find exploration more difficult. It's not general. It's based on this plot, these people, this scenario.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was kind of thinking for them, I guess this is more headcanon than anything else, but they would kind of be attracted to magical places as well. Like, you know, a bird with a magnetic sense, right? So they would kind of wander around.
Looking for sacred ground.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Either corrupt and use as something else as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, hold on a sec. Is it people that can innately cast spells?
I think it says arcane spellcasters.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, but if
Level 3 or above.
you have level 3 spells, but if I give you a necklace of fireball,
I don't think that counts.
you don't think that counts?
No, because it has to be like, it does say like a humanoid that has the ability. Like here, let's read the actual.
Yeah, what's the literal
what's
text?
the words here?
Because I'm sitting here thinking, you know, what if Dumbledore became a fucking green Slaad and then is training up an entire like generation of wizards just to wait for them to get to 3rd level spellcasters?
I mean, I don't think a green Slaad would be smart enough to pull that off.
What's their intelligence?
11?
Well, that's average person intelligence.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're not going to be able to, I don't know, role play, I guess, someone who is in such a privileged scenario, right? Like you're not going to have the same knowledge that they have, right? You're not going to have intrinsic knowledge of all the school and everything like that.
That's fair. You would have to play more aloof, right? Like we don't really see the headmaster anymore, right?
Yeah. But yeah, the actual wording is green Slaad if the host was a spellcaster able to cast 3rd level spells or higher.
Okay, so yeah, they have to have
magic. Yeah.
Not just magic items. Okay.
Yeah, it is mine.
How about for combat, Megan?
For these ones, they're obviously going to try and use as much magic as they can because they love their magical nonsense. It makes them feel like they look smart. So they're going to use their, like, because the spells that they get they're going to use their once fireball per day just to be, like, intense. But I like the fact that they can detect your thoughts and they can turn invisible. So they...
Do they have a stealth roll? Do they have a boost to stealth?
Nope, nothing like that.
Okay.
No, they just have your basic, like...
They just turn invisible and stand in the corner.
Fireball! They do have pretty good dex, though. So, I mean, they could probably roll a good stealth roll to hide themselves 100%. But, like, again, like, if they're not necessarily going to want to fight you, because in my mind, they are still quite squishy-ish.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't necessarily as bolstered and strong as the reds and the greens are.
The blues.
Sorry, the reds and blues.
Yeah, we'll get there are lots of
so
colors.
many colors.
Yeah.
So they are going to want to protect themselves in some way, shape, or form. So they are going to stand back, in my mind, and they're going to attack you in large groups. They won't attack you until there is more than one of them. Yeah. They will not take you on by themselves, or they will have an army of blue or red behind them.
This really does feel like a great end of tier 2 villain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nice little solve.
Sorry, what are we on? We're on
combat.
They're always going to retreat and get away. These guys can cast spells, and they know they're super powerful, and they're going to be Skeletor. They're going to curses next time, He-Man, and off they fucking go, right?
With their pet cat.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's why they have invisibility, right? So they can skedaddle.
Yeah.
If they see all their reds and blues dying, they'll be like, oh, okay, no, I'm out of here. I'll try again.
It's interesting when you see invisibility. It's different than stealth. Stealth, in my head, implies ambush tactics.
Yeah.
Invisibility implies retreat tactics.
Yeah, agreed. Especially since it disappears if you attack, right?
Yeah. Well, reappears if you attack. Yes, the same thing.
Yes.
The effect disappears.
You are saying the same thing in different ways.
Yes.
Welcome to D&D 5th edition.
Better than 3.5, where it would have been, no, you didn't say the specific thing correctly.
Yeah. Rules as written.
In which book?
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think you guys covered the topic pretty well.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more to do in combat there.
No, not really.
They're not fighters in my mind to begin with. If they have to fight you, they're going to use other means to do so.
Yeah, and they have that one big fireball to fuck you up and make you stop and think while they escape.
Yeah, peace out. Yeah. All right, let's go into some gray Slaads. So they are the smallest and smaller of the Slaadi folk, with longer, more amphibian-looking limbs. So they're kind of like more gangly looking. I'm doing weird things with my arms.
Please do that the whole time
No
you're
one else
doing
can
this.
see this. Gray Slaadies, as mentioned, come from the outgrown green Slaads who go through basically a magical metamorphosis. So they kind of, they do maintain their magical capabilities, and their goal is to seek out more magic capabilities to continue to prove their strengths. So this is kind of like your green Slaad that aged out and is just like, I'm better than the green Slaads. I need to continue to be better than everyone else in magic.
Oh, fuck. It's like that person who retires and goes back to school.
Yeah. I'm going in for HR. I want to make everybody's working lives better.
It's a strange analogy to use for it, but okay.
I feel like there's more people that are going to relate to that than you know. Some will even make it their life's missions to seek out becoming a Death Slaad, which can happen when a Grey Slaad consumes the body of another Death Slaad, but we'll kind of get into that, I think, a little bit later. But stats-wise, you will continue to see the similarities in the Slaad, especially to that of the green we just kind of discussed, except that their AC does jump to 18. They lose some strength, but gain it in Con and Charisma, so obviously their spellcasting ability does increase quite a bit. They do maintain their ability to do the shape changing, as well as they are a charisma-based spellcaster. They continue to have their magic resistance, and of course they maintain their ability to regenerate. They have the classic multi-attack with their bites and claws, but there's a little bit of a fun added bit. They, for some reason, have swords.
Yeah.
Yeah! So they went from being a magic user that has a staff that goes bop, these ones have swords that go kushmeen.
You need to do all of the sound effects from now on, man.
But, in my mind, I tried so hard to find a reason as to why they would have swords. And I could not necessarily find, a lore or piece that really made that 100% make sense. So I'd be interested to see what you...
Okay, all right.
I imagine it like a status symbol.
Okay.
I guess so.
Well, no, here's where I'm coming from. They have beefed up compared to the green Slaad. However, they don't get more attacks. Their magic is still just fireball twice a day now.
Yeah. Two of them.
Which means they've invested a lot into becoming a gray Slaad at this point.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, how do I protect myself? Remember, they're medium sized now, which means, yeah, they've got a bunch of hit points, but a couple of blue Slaad could probably overpower them and hold them down. And
yeah.
You've got some problems, in the Slaadi community becoming medium-sized.
Yeah.
So the idea of carrying a sword would just be like, hey, I don't have the claws anymore, but I got this fucking thing, so fuck right up. I mean, they'd still do have claws.
They still do have claws.
But it's not like the big, badass blue Slaad claws.
Yeah.
And to your point, their spells are bolstered, so they do get a couple of extra spells, so it just feels like they are continuing to increase their spellcasting capabilities, and yet they want to carry a greatsword.
But none of them are offensive spells.
That's true. So, to go over the spells that they do actually get added, so on top of their Detect Magic, Detect Thoughts, and Invisibility, and Mage Hand, they now also get Major Image. And then they're twice per day, as you mentioned, they do get their Fireball, but they also now have Fear, which they had before, but they get twice a day. They can now fly, and they have tongues. So this is when they can actually sort of speak all languages, in my mind.
I do love that the Slaadi have tongues.
Yeah. Oh, do you?
Just think of Golem, just the wriggling.
And then once per day, they now have plane shift on their self only.
Okay.
So these are the ones that are going to be hopping about.
I feel like
Pun intended. Sorry, I had to make that land.
I feel like I should have paid attention. They weren't scooching or rocking up. So
Trigger word, Adam.
I like this. I like that they have tongues. This makes them deadlier because now they're not just humans. They're not just common. They're dwarves. They're elves. Like, I'm infiltrating some of the other races that are going to swap between languages. More often now. So that's kind of why tongues is important for me.
I see them as scouts too.
Yeah.
Right. Like they infiltrate before the rest of the Slaad come. Right, and try to figure out weaknesses in a society and stuff like that.
It's interesting to me that in the Slaadi society, we've got the strongest doing the infiltrating and allowing the weakest to then come in.
Yeah.
Normally, you send in your spies first, and then the strong guys are coming afterwards, right? Your scouts are not as powerful as your warriors, traditionally speaking. But this time, you could run into a gray Slaad that's prepping for the blue and the red.
Yeah.
You don't really have the red and the blue prepping for the incoming gray.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also think it's interesting that the higher level ones don't reproduce. It's only the bottom two, right? So, and they're more about numbers, I guess.
Yeah, because that's the whole point, though, is that your reds and your blues create the mass numbers. Those mass numbers then create the special green ones. And then the green ones then will use the mass production to produce more of themselves. And then it's always that drive for more power to bolster their own capabilities, which gets you higher and higher and higher up in your tiers, right?
Yeah.
So
can you please go into why they wanted to get rid of their loincloths?
Well, I mean, maybe they stopped getting cold.
we don't have cold slots anymore.
We don't have cold slots anymore.
Nobody likes coleslaw anyway, right?
But you know, like that's a good point though. Is also this is now they're past the form of decency and they're just like, fuck it, I'm the strongest person in the world.
This makes perfect sense. You guys gone to Wreck Beach, right? Everybody there is over the age of 50, right?
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Wreck Beach is the nude beach in Vancouver. But it's that makes sense. You hit the certain point where you're like, you know what? I'm liberated in my sexuality, and you just have those fucking 65-year-old women with the blue streaks in their hair that are just letting it all hang out. And more power to them, but that's who the Grey Slaad are.
I was going to dye my hair blue this week. And now I'm not going to.
I meant the single blue lock right above the ear.
Oh, okay. No, we go in dark. Anyways, but now, I feel like now, you're past the form of decency, and you're just like, look at what I am. I am beautiful.
Perceive me in my. This is my final form.
Oh my god, I'm imagining Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Oh god.
And he's got it like tucked between his legs.
Yeah.
Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
We're gonna cut that out, but you're gonna use that audio in most of the podcasts, just randomly spitting it out.
That's gonna be Kyle's sign off from now on. Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
Just get Dave in the background. Yeah.
There are a lot of good sound bites. I did talk about how I like Slaad tongues. We've got some good clips from this episode.
Any hoozle.
All right. So I guess let's get into some questions and roll some dice.
All right. I like how concerned you were for that. Like, let's do it, I guess.
I'm afraid what's gonna come next.
Oh.
I got a 17.
Got a 10.
11. All right, Adam. Let's start us off with a quest.
If I can be honest at this point, what we're doing between the green Slaad and the gray Slaad is we are finding that half step between Ssendam and the green Slaad, right? Like we're leveling up, but a lot of the powers are very similar. They're amping up in number and frequency, but we don't have anything new really from the green Slaad, except nudity and a great sword, right? And I feel like we've covered that. So a lot of the quest stuff, we can dumb down a Ssendam quest and make it a gray Slaad. We can make the green Slaad quest a little bit smarter and make it a gray Slaad. The big difference here is that it can speak multiple languages now, but it has to cast a spell to do it. So even that's limited sometimes. Yeah. And remember, they don't have meta magic, so you can see them casting the spell, right? So they've got to get behind closed doors, cast it. They've got a limited duration that they can do this before they've got to cast it again, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we are dealing with, like I mentioned before, these guys are infiltrating before the rest of the army shows up, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that at this point we're talking about army. We're not talking about an incursion of 5 or 6 red Slaad or the green Slaad looking for power at the mage's tower. Like, by the time you hit gray Slaad, there's an overarching plot here. And the other thing to point out, though, is that the gray Slaad, this gray Slaad, or any gray Slaad that you're going to find out in the world, will have one of the control gems. Otherwise, they would be getting called back to the spawning stone.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And that's true for the green ones as well, which means, as powerful as these guys are, they also know that they have a weakness that they can be controlled. And they are powerful, and they can be controlled.
Yeah.
And so they know it. So this is why I think invisibility, plane shift, and the retreating is such a big deal. Because this is not just you may kill me. This is you may control me.
Yeah.
Which is a lot scarier. Right. So this is kind of, they're seeing big picture, and how intelligent, how conniving do you want to make them?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question here. And I think that there's a wide gamut of what you can do, but they're not vicious. They're intelligent.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about, this is a CR9 who is really operating in tier 3, like above their CR level, just from the plotting and the scheming. They're too smart to be dicking about with level 8 characters.
Yeah. Especially knowing that like they're like the lower Slaads are not nearly as organized and intelligent. It's almost like they need somebody to organize them. This would be the one.
Yeah.
Right.
And you do have, yes, so here's the other side. You're not running into a gray Slaad by itself too often. Yeah, they'll be the first one on the scene if you can get there quickly, and that's a good little like side quest for a couple of sessions. But for the most part, if you're using Slaadi in general, you are going to be dealing with them. It's not like you fight one cultist, you fight 8 at a time.
Yeah.
By the time you're dealing with gray Slaadi, you're fighting a bunch of reds and blues as well. It's got a couple of green lieutenants.
Yeah, it's built a horde.
Yeah.
See,
a knot.
A knot. A knot of Slaad.
I don't agree. I see them operating independently. I see them going in before everybody else, kind of mapping out stuff. I also see them having like a little bit of selfishness and smart enough to have started forming their own identity, right? Something apart from the mass.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm with you. I'm trying to figure out like how to put that into words. These guys.
Well, I mean, because they're going to want to travel individually because they're trying to seek out their own power. If they were to have green Slaads around, he runs the risk of the green Slaads getting that power. So they're probably operating on their own once they reach this level because the power they're seeking they want for themselves.
But I would say that power is in numbers as well, and they would know that. Like, it's a risk that they're taking.
Yeah.
I can see actually your point of view on that. The individuality you're talking about, like no two Slaadi are the same, right? As we talked about in the last episode, just their physical deformities and shit they all make them different. But the gray Slaadi are, you know, when you see in a TV show, there's all of the ninjas, but there's the one with the exact same outfit, but he's just slightly broader shoulders, or he's taller than the rest, or he also has a red bandana on.
Yeah,
right?
just to make it look a little bit different.
That's the boss guy, right?
Yeah.
He has a name,
yeah.
right? Like, and that's the thing about ninjas, pirates, and robots, is they're easy to fight until they have a name. And now they're the most difficult thing in the world.
Yeah.
So I always want to fight a horde of ninjas because then they're fodder. I never want to fight the ninja because now they're an assassin.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel that way about the Slaadi as well. If I have a gray Slaad off on his own doing his shit by himself, he's got his own name, or it has its own name rather, scarier and more conniving than the one leading a group of other Slaadi.
Yeah.
Because then I'm just getting into combat, right? That's what that is. It's cult shit at that point.
True.
Yeah, for me, I think a fun quest with the Grey Slaad would be getting hired by one to kill a death slad so that it can eat its body.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Because they're one of their main goals is to seek out a death slad so they can become a death slad, but they probably can't kill one themselves. They're going to need...
They cast tongues to speak French so they can eat the frog legs.
Oh my god, Adam!
Yeah, but I love the idea of it coming as like a beat up farmer asking for help, you know? And it's like, oh, I got attacked by these things. Because I feel like I'm skipping ahead, but getting into the death slads, they do come with gangs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna need a good adventurer's help to be able to do that, right? Mixed in with, they'll probably find a good adventuring group that has magic characters to kill two birds with one stone. Take the magic from your players once they're done, but also become a death slad, right?
Yeah, I like that.
So I feel like they're gonna seek out. So this, if you go for the medium big bad, this is the one that's seeking out your group to take the magical powers, but also want to use you to be able to get that death slad so it can get to its next step. So now not only is it a death slad, but it now has the magic capabilities of your...
Oh yeah, it knows what you're up to because it has watched you kill this other one, and
it's following you around.
Yeah.
It's the NPC in your party you didn't know you had.
Yeah, that's good. All right, how about role playing?
Smarter, more conniving. I mean, the intelligence level here only goes up by 2 points, so it's like a +1 now. It's smarter than your average peasant. It's going to be able to go toe to toe with your mayor NPC, but it's not a wizard, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a dragon. Its intelligence is not that high. Honestly, I would run a lot of Grey Slaad very similarly to how I run a lot of Yugoloths, where they like to sit in the neutral. This is chaotic neutral as opposed to neutral evil, but they're up to their own shit. They're doing their own thing on the side, and it's now that I'm thinking about how you have separated them out from they don't have an army with them, I feel like they very much could because they've leveled up.
Yeah.
Especially if they're about to become a death slot. If they know that that's on the horizon, they're going to start massing numbers now.
Yeah.
Beware the Grey Slaad with friends. He's about to level up.
Yeah.
Right.
It's creating his army. Yeah.
So I think that there's, from a role playing perspective, this is going to be an NPC and a well fleshed out one. Right. It's going to be able to hold a real conversation instead of, welcome to the village.
Hello. Yeah.
All right. Same thing as you. I don't think I don't see a lot of change.
There's not a whole lot of change. Like the green, gray, death in 5th edition are very, the next step on the run.
Yeah, and their goal is very specific.
Yeah.
Like they know what they want. They know what they're going to. It just depends on what kind of group you're working with. We'll debate what kind of role playing you do with this character.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're going to be super smart and want to infiltrate with puzzles and XYZ, or if they're just going to be a brute that's going to be a swordsman for you for a little while because they have swords.
Yeah.
They know how to use them.
I think it's interesting that they go from 3 attacks with the claws and the bite to 1 greatsword attack.
Yeah.
Right.
Take that. On guard.
Yeah.
And again, I know that I'm stuck on the sword thing, but they're also the most weakest looking ones.
Yeah.
And yet they're the ones that are carrying a great sword.
Well, the Death Slaads get great swords too, and those are part of the multi-attack.
Yeah.
So this is so I have my sword. I can't use it really good yet, but I will.
Yeah.
So
I really want to know.
So just give me a sec. I gotta go eat somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exploration or clues?
Same as the Green Slaad. I'm not breaking any new ground on this necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's with anything with regular slaads at this point. Like if you were hunting down a slaad, at some point you're going to realize you're probably going to come across a gray one at some point.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing that I would think is the only thing that I can add to that is that if you kill one of these or find one and you think it was the big bad, it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But you as the DM know that it wasn't.
Yeah.
But your group will think that it won.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about for combat?
You have a sword, and I think that sword is for threatening only.
Yeah.
Right.
Intimidation.
Fireball.
Yeah.
But fireball. That is your answer. Fireball and retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I will draw my sword to point it at you and be like, "Stay back!"
Yeah.
Ninja dust, and get the fuck out. Right.
Yeah.
Of all of the ones we've talked about so far, I believe these ones might be the most cowardly.
Yes, they will retreat the most, in my mind.
Yeah.
Because they've lived too long and put too much work into who they are that they're not giving it up because your team decided to turn on you.
Yeah. And again, And again, you have collected a red gem and a blue gem, and like you've controlled other Slaadi in the past. This guy knows it. He knows you're coming for the gray gem. That's a fucking issue. I will not be enslaved because for them, that's 1,000 times worse because the opposite of chaos is order, and to have to follow someone else's rules has got to be fucking torture.
Yeah. Interesting.
Woo.
I agree with you. I don't see it. I see it avoiding combat at all costs unless it is well prepared. Like I can see it laying a bunch of traps for you to stumble across to weaken you before it attacks.
I love the idea of the fact that it's got like some sort of palantir, some crystal ball. It is looking through as your party's coming through the dungeon, and he's just got a whole lot of levers to the side going, almost, ah!
Take that, do-gooder.
Yeah. Very Skeletor in my head.
Love it.
Okay, moving on to Death Slaad.
So with Death Slaadi, they're the next step up from the Grey Slaad. When a Grey Slaad decides or that they want to beef up, they eat a Death Slaad.
Nom nom.
Yeah, which raises the question, where do the first ones come from?
Right?
Well, I know this. The first ones come from the fact that they have tapped into the negative plane. The idea is at some point, have we talked about the negative plane on this? I know that we talked about it on the Crystal Dragons episode. We talked about the positive plane.
We talked about Nightwalkers in the previous episode.
Yeah, where we talked about the negative plane a little bit.
Yeah.
So, are you familiar with this, Megan?
Throw down for those at home don't know.
Okay, so, but I know. But if you don't know.
Yeah. You might as well help someone out.
Yeah. So the idea of the negative plane is that it is the concept of positive and negative energy. There are two planes that you cannot go to, but they are technically spaces that are just full of energy. The positive plane being life and not necessarily goodness, but the idea of life and vitality. The negative plane is where death and rot come from.
Fair.
When you cast spells and you use material components, those material components are actually teleporting to one of these two planes. And then you get that energy back, and the weave then forces the energy into your body, and that's how you cast the spell. When you use your verbal components, it is actually the air of your breath that is vibrating in a specific way that gets transported and then replaced by this positive or negative energy.
Yeah.
You cannot go to these places, except in some unique cases, there are ways to go there, but it fucks you up significantly. Now, there are different, like the idea of voids and these negative spaces. In my campaign, we just have the idea of nothingness. When enough portals connect, they just kind of turn the space in between them into a big, empty, nothing space. You look at it, and there is the lack of existence within it, and it will drive you mad.
Yeah.
No sound, no sight. It is like it is a hollowing of your senses, like you're getting your skull scooped out by just trying to comprehend what is there, because there's nothing. The negative space, however,
I don't know why that made me think of ice cream.
because I said scoop.
Yeah.
For in the negative plane, there is something there, and it is negative energy. The same way that a black hole is a thing, right? You just can't perceive it necessarily.
Yeah.
But it is definitely there. So the negative plane has infused these Death Slaadi with power, some way, in one way or another, and I think that it's because they're going to seek it out because of the idea of the slow destruction and disintegration of reality back down to its basic form. Death is good because death is back to the potential building blocks of nothing. This is what Limbo would love, the negative plane, because it's chaos, it's wild, right? And it as much as it's making and it's creating life and it's spewing out things, it's also unmaking an equal amount, right? So that's where the original Death Slaad would have come from, and I'm sure that other ones can be spawned that way, where a Grey Slaadi gets, or any Slaad gets imbued with this negative plane. But traditionally speaking, if you are a Grey Slaad and you eat the corpse of a Death Slaad, then you become a Death Slaad. You power up. These guys are medium creatures as well, but they do look beefier, and hornier too. They have bigger horns on their back. They lose their big mohawk frill that the other one had. I think the Grey Slaad looks a little bit like a gremlin from the movie Gremlins. Just
I can see that. Yeah,
I can see that.
But the Death Slaad does not. they are more shoulders and scarier. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to them. They're still medium size. They do shift now to chaotic evil.
Okay.
So they're no longer chaotic neutral. However, their stats are mostly exactly what you expect. Like their AC doesn't change. They get a mountain of hit points. Whereas CR10, they've got all of the same mechanical boosts, but their speed, their resistances, their senses, all that stays essentially the same, right? They can still do the shape changing. Their innate spell casting is actually the same.
Okay.
Except they now get one more spell, and it is Cloud Kill once per day.
Dope.
They still have the same magic resistance. Their weapons are considered magical. And now they can regenerate 10 hit points at the start of its turn if it has at least one, which is neat. Now, we can see that this is the beginning of how Ssendam could do it with 40 hit points, right? So
Yeah.
So you can tell the older that you get, the more powerful you get as a slot, the more you start to move towards Ssendam's power base, right?
Yeah.
The only other notable thing is that the Greatsword is now part of the multi-attack, and you have a better chance of hitting with it. From a lore perspective, these guys are building armies. They are coercing others to go with them, to hop planes, to take shit over. These are going to set themselves up as captains and generals, and when you do have a knot of Slaadi, you are going to have a death Slaad in the middle of that, trying to control everybody. So
Yeah.
they're out for destruction, and they like the destruction because they've been infused by the negative plane, where others are just really limbo, right? This is a meeting of the two. So it is a little bit more them getting off on the idea of causing damage and harm, but their followers are not that way. They're doing it because it's their calling.
Yeah, it's their
right.
job.
Yeah, they don't love it. They're soldiers, right? Whereas the Death Slaad is reveling in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's it. There's not a whole lot more about Death Slaad. And as a matter of fact, short of pulling together gangs and whatnot and using a longsword, there's not a whole lot more here between the level 9 and level 10, right?
Yeah.
It's the hit point bump. I think they get another like 50 on average hit points, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They're going to sit in battle longer with you and do more attacks.
Yeah.
That's why their CR went up, not because they've got cool, awesome abilities and spells and lore and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because in their minds they have a group and a horde that will protect them. So
Yeah.
they're going to be a little bit more brazen, a little bit more in your business.
And these guys are set up to be a end of tier 2, beginning of tier 3, like threat, like legitimate real threat. You could, and most of the published campaigns at like level 14, yeah, you could have a death Slaad sitting at the end of that.
Yeah.
With a bunch of slotty nonsense all the way through it. You can absolutely do that shit. As a matter of fact, the monster manual says this is the last one. This is the highest tier. This is what we get in 5th edition. We had to wait for Minsk and Boo's Journal of Villainy to come out years later. And it's like one of the things that nobody's looked into. It's one of these little PDFs that was released on the side. Said, hey, we also did this. Don't worry about it, right?
I'll be honest, I didn't know the book existed until you gave it to me.
Until I put it in your hand. So there, and it's not actually a book. I had to get that printed. Like,
really?
It is a PDF.
Oh, shit. All right.
Yeah. I spent the money to get that one specifically printed off of DM's Guild.
Nice.
Drive-Thru RPG? DM's Guild? One of Drive-Thru RPG.
Maybe.
One of them. So I feel like the Death Slaad are a shitty end cap. I want more Slaadi. I think they should have gotten CR 14, 18.
Until you do the jump to the solid 23.
Yeah. Right. But I love Ssendam.
But I feel like you could, as a DM, bolster it, you know? Like, take the Grey Slaad and build it to be something more than it actually is.
Well, I think it says CR10, but in any sort of combat you have with it, it's going to be more because you are going to be fighting also CR5, CR8s.
Yeah, it has
You're dealing with an army.
Yeah,
you're in control of the environment. You're fighting on your terms. You've planned. Like, the intelligence is another thing that's gone up on this, right? Like, all the stats went up. So this thing is more intelligent than your barbarian fighter, even your cleric, probably.
Yeah.
Right? So short of the artificer and the wizard, this might be the most intelligent person in the room.
Yeah.
So there's some strategy and some tactics being used here. But again, everything we've talked about, I think still holds true.
Yep.
There's really nothing new here for me.
Yeah.
No.
The only thing I have, and this isn't really advice about role-playing, is that when I think about them, I think about Mr. Burns. And I imagine steepling fingers and saying excellent.
I just really had to get that visual out there.
I did. I'm sorry. It was in my head and I had to do it. Okay, so in the grand scheme of Slaad, I see the red, blues as foot soldiers. The greens are sergeants. The grays are scouts. And then the death are generals.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, you're never going to see a death sled alone. It's always going to be with a bunch of red and blues.
Yeah.
And they are the last person to go. So, what I imagine in infestation to look like is the gray sled goes in and does a little bit of pre-work, like softening the target, whatever, to prepare for this wave to come in after them.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that a death sled is going to keep a gray sled at arm's length.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
oh, yeah.
You are absolutely not allowed with the rest of the fucking army.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you're out on work.
Yeah,
you are not within the horde. Yeah.
We talked through sending stones. We don't meet in the same room, you devious fuck.
You piece of shit.
I can see you looking at my naked body and licking your lips. Get the fuck out of here.
You're lucky I'm not wearing a loincloth.
You have no idea what's hidden behind this loincloth.
Last time we were in the same room.
Great sword.
And I know how to wield it better than you. It's in the stat block.
Last time we were in the same room together, you salted me, okay? I know what's coming.
Salted.
It's assaulted.
Yeah.
Assaulted.
Okay, no, I wasn't going for that. It's just where it ended up.
Imagine, do they have the same issue that slugs do? No, they don't. Frogs, if you salt them,
You know
when you throw
yeah, but like, don't dry out your frog. You'll kill it. Like,
I'm just like, but can you just imagine that being a combat tactic for your D&D group? It's like pocket sand, but it's just salt.
It's not even that. They're like, okay, we've completed the first half of the magical components. We got sodium for the second half of the magical components.
A magical item this is. Sodium.
Let's get some chloride going.
Don't eat it. It's bad for your kidneys.
Okay, so during my research for this, because I feel like combat, role-playing, and expert, I know where these questions are going. There's not a whole lot more there.
I do have one thing about combat, though, that I think it separates it from the rest of it, is that this guy would have no problem murdering his own people. So I see one of the combat tactics as being he's going to send some red and blues against a party member to tackle them to the ground just so he can drop a fireball and you can't run away from it.
Big picture and evil.
Yeah.
Right? And all of the other side will be like, what's happening? And they're gonna like flop around and like, he just fireballed us. You're like, yeah, he did. Yeah. Well, I guess a bunch of people got destroyed. Because, like, again, not good or evil. They're not going to revel in that. They'll be afraid for their own lives for a little bit, but chaos.
Yeah.
Right? So, to my point about the research, though, I ran across a couple of extra really cool tidbits that I wanted to go over. If a death Slaad that's over 100 years old retreats into isolation in Limbo for over a year, they can emerge as a white Slaad. This is from previous editions.
Okay.
White Slaadi break the laws of space and time, and they actually can travel slightly through time. They can infect humanoids with their bites, so the chaos or the tadpoles are now through bites as well. Okay. They can spit globs of acid, and they can stun enemies with attacks, and they can duplicate themselves by calling other weaker versions of themselves out of the time stream from the immediate past and future to help them fight.
Interesting.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So when I say the previous editions did too much, this is what I mean.
Too far.
If a white Slaad does another period of isolation for another year, they will often end up, because at this point we're chaotic evil. Yeah. They'll go and they'll explore the Abyss. Now the Abyss is not just a place, it is a living, breathing, thinking entity that spews out demons on purpose, out of its own just existence. Which means that this thing loves it when Slaadi show up, because it starts to imbue them with powers of the Abyss. So we have negative plane, Limbo, and now the Abyss coming all together. And this creates a black Slaad, who is very, very rare. White Slaadi are very rare, but like black Slaadi are like, there's like 8. There's not many. You'll have 1 in a campaign. And it creates a void, it is a void of pure negative energy, roughly in the shape of a Slaad that walks around. So this thing is not really material now. It is an energy creature. It can blast negative energy beams from itself, kind of like Eldritch Blast, but like negative energy, which do all sorts of necrotic damage. Its attacks can prevent enemies from healing, and it can create smaller voids of negative energy that if you touch it, you take shit tons of damage. So
I don't like it.
Too far.
Yeah.
Wait for it. It gets weirder.
Great.
We talked about the first Slaad to ever exist with Ssendam. Do you know who the second one was?
I do not.
Because they published a
John.
Stat Black. Stat Black.
A stat black.
They published a Stat Black for it.
Thanks.
That was for Peps.
Yeah.
Stat Black. They published a Stat Block for it. This is in Mordenkainen's Fiendish Folio, Volume 1. There are no other volumes. It's the only one. This thing is $10 on DM's Guild, or on, I keep saying DM's Guild, on Drive-Thru-RPG, and it is not worth the fucking money. Everything on there is a CR3 or below, except for 2 creatures. He's one of them. His name is Igorl. He is the second Slaadi to ever exist, and he has stayed in Limbo and just, like, been the biggest badass. He is the one that controls the things in Limbo.
Okay.
For the Slaadi. So he's probably sitting at the spawning stone in some fucking throne.
Yeah.
Ssendam is fucked off, and so Igorl is the de facto leader of the Slaadi, and he is known as the Lord of Entropy.
Oh.
Yes, Igorl delights in the act of unmaking and bringing chaos to any ecosystem that it visits. Lesser Slaadi follow close behind the Lord of Entropy, and you can talk to him because he's not chaotic evil. He's now grown out of that level of shit, and he's just all about chaos and disrupting and returning things to nothingness. Back to the building blocks.
Okay.
He's CR23, just like Ssendam, because he was spat out seconds later, right?
Yeah.
He's large sized, like I said, chaotic neutral. AC of 20. He's got over 300 hit points. Speed of 40 feet. Climb of 40 feet. Swim of 40 feet. We've got a +7 for strength and con, and a +8 for charisma. Everything is huge on this.
Yeah, sounds almost identical to...
Yeah.
Yep. Damage immunities are necrotic, poison, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing for non-magical attacks. Resistance, the same as the elemental ones the other Slaadi get. And immune to charmed, exhaustion, frightened, and poisoned. True sight, 120 feet.
Wow.
So not just blind sight, true sight.
Nice.
And all forms of telepathy, all languages, out to 120 feet as well. But now we get an aura, an entropic aura, which means any creature that is not a construct or undead that's within 15 feet takes 4d6 necrotic damage. That was roughly the same?
No, it was a madness aura. It doesn't take
Madness,
damage.
So this is actual negative energy that is like radiating out from Igorl, the Lord of Entropy. Again, legendary resistances 3 times a day. So if it chooses, or if it fails the saving throw, you can just choose to, no, I succeed 3 times, which is infuriating. All the magical resistances that you expect. The spellcasting list is long, and it includes such wonderful things as Power Word Kill and the symbol, the death symbol from the spell symbol. It also has Power Word Pain, which is a new one.
I love it.
Yeah.
And as well as Enervation, Phantasmal Killer, and At Will, Fly, Detect Magic, Darkness at Will, which I thought was really fun, Blight at Will, Chaos Bolt, Shield as well, which is fucking infuriating. At Will Shield.
Yeah.
So there's no limit to that, right?
Yeah, once per turn.
Yeah. So once a round. But we also have for actions, the cool thing about Igorl is that he wields a scythe that's an adamantine scythe with the Slaadi word for death carved right in it. And like he's one of the handful of people who's visited the negative plane.
Yeah.
For the multi-attack, he makes 3 attacks, 2 with the scythe, and
Imagine
1.
he got the scythe as a souvenir.
Yeah, just stopped at the gift shop.
Yeah.
Oh my god, with this stupid scythe.
So 2 with the scythe and 1 with the entropic touch, which I'll mention in a minute here. The only other thing that's noteworthy about Igorl is he's got essentially a belt with a whole bunch of stone tablets hanging off of it, which are radiating out negative energy as well. So this is like ancient, old, negative, dark energies coming out of it. And I love, he's been a part of D&D for a couple of editions now. I love that he got this little stat block, but it's fucked up because he does 2d10 +7 slashing damage plus 3d12 necrotic. Anyone that's reduced to 10 hit points or to 0 hit points with the scythe then immediately turns to ash and can't be resurrected without a wish spell. You just are burnt down to carbon. The entropic touch, which he can do once as part of his multi-attack, is also just him reaching out and fucking touching you where it is 2d8 plus 7 necrotic damage, and you have to succeed on a DC 22 con save or gain 1 level of exhaustion. And he's handing those out all of the time.
Yeah.
On top of that, he can summon 1d4 plus 1 death Slaadi that appear. They don't end up being able to summon others, which all Slaad used to be able to do. If you have one, you have many. They keep summoning more.
Yeah.
But they don't do that in 5th ed. But he can summon a bunch. He can also teleport up to 120 feet. But he has legendary actions. Scythe is one of them. The teleport is one of them. So he's bopping around the fucking battlefield as well.
Yeah.
But if he uses all 3 of his legendary actions, he, quote-unquote, calls the void. So anyone within 15 feet is getting hit with this damage around him. He's doing more necrotic damage with his multi-attack 3 times. If you get reduced to 0, you're dead. There's no death saves involved here. And you're getting exhausted as you go. But then he calls the void. Each creature that is not a construct or undead within 30 feet of Igorl must make a DC 22 con saving throw against his attempt to unmake life. It's 12d6 necrotic damage on a failed save, half as much as on a successful one, and he heals that amount, or half of that amount, whatever he does, and he hits everybody at once. So 12d6 is an average of 42. You take 42, you take 42, you take 42. That's 21 each. I just healed 62.
Yeah.
I also like the term unmake life.
Yeah.
He's not killing. He's just undoing.
I'm undoing. I'm just taking it back.
So I ran across him in the Fiendish Folio, which I was like, we're recording this so far in advance. I was recording that like 3 days ago, and I clapped and danced when I found more Slaadi bullshit.
You're like, yay!
Yay! I did it, and I did it on air too. If you go back and listen to it, I have a little there's a little celebration. Yay! So this is like 4 months later. It's finally paying off for the listeners, but yeah, this made me like Death Slaad more though. Because I can see now the progression through green even, all the way up to becoming one of these lords of the Slaadi, right?
Yeah. There's your goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't want more lords. There are like a handful of them. They don't want lots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's how the first Death Slaad got made, right? It was Igorl being like, you were the chosen one and imparting part of the negative energy into it, right? Like he's basically picking knights.
Or maybe, yeah. Or maybe he went into the negative plane with other great Slaadi.
Little army. Yeah.
Right? And everybody else died. And so he brought them out and he's like, hey, eat this.
You must survive.
Yeah.
Eat this dying corpse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that logic.
So anyway, I ran across that. I thought it was a cool little thing to end off. Not many people are going to have access to that stat block, but if you're running a Slaad campaign up through tier 4 and Ssendam is one half of it, Igorl is the other half of it.
Yeah.
And that stat block does exist for 5th edition.
I imagine you're not going to ever see them in the same place. Like, right? Like
One's a homebody and one has Wanderlust.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, this is why Limbo is not on my bucket list.
No?
No.
Not a vacation place for
Not
you.
my vacation place.
So, there are... You thought I was done. We're not done with all the different kinds of Slaad. Kyle's like, wrap the fucking episode up.
Yeah, we're at like 2.5 hours.
Are we?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll go through this really, really quick. So Igorl, who is the Lord of Entropy, as I said, personally selects certain voids, Black Slaadi, to undergo a special transformation, turning them into entropics, which is even more powerful. They are his closest followers, but far more fragile than normal Black Slaadi, and they are far more direct. They will charge right into battle because when they die, they become miniature black holes. On the
I become
battlefield.
the void.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Like, I am the void. We are the void. You will be the void too.
Shoot for the stars, and even if you miss, you let them.
You become a void.
Yeah. Shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you become a void.
But here's the thing: the black holes are they drift, but they are sentient. Which means with all the telepathy shit going on too, they can communicate with Igorl as well. If a Black Slaad becomes too powerful though, and he doesn't need more entropics, he will just kill them because fuck this noise. I don't want competition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're all Slaad, no, regardless of level, are constantly worried about competition.
Yeah.
Now, just as a little footnote, just to wrap this up, we don't have stats for any of this shit in 5th edition. No white or black or Slaadi or Gourmeal. Gourmeal are... Okay, so in pure chaos, you accidentally sometimes create law because you just, by law of averages.
Oops.
Yeah, so they create... so some Slaadi exist that are lawful and are out there to fight the Slaad. They team up with the Githzerai, or the Githzerai out there. So they are walking around Limbo as well, with all of the abilities that the Slaadi have to, like, withstand the elemental chaos.
Yeah.
However, they're good guys. You can team up with them. There's also Mud Slaadi, which are lesser than Red Slaadi and are...
Yeah, I think it got too convoluted in previous editions. Like, they did so many. Right? Like, even with... There was blue and red, there was red juggernauts, and then there was blue digesters I saw, and then probably with green they had a second form as well. Yeah, the crazy thing is that they were shifting and changing all of the time, and they were some of the big bads, like devils and demons are in 5th edition. Slaadi were an existential threat in previous editions. They were one of the big ones. They got reduced down to 5 boring stat blocks in the monster manual. Yeah. And some cool lore, right? And so... neat, you can go deep with this shit when you go digging into it, which is kind of my point here to wrap it up. There's a lot of fun shit to do with Slaadi. Yeah. In the previous episode we did with it too, I made the suggestion of, corralling a bunch of different kinds of people to figure out what combination makes the best. That's some genetic manipulation shit right there. Some weird ass eugenics.
I'm like looking at you in a very different way now.
When you gotta play bad guys, you gotta think like bad guys.
Yeah. Oh my god, your search history.
Anyways, so before we wrap up this episode, let's cut to our last ad break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/itsamimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
Do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap this episode up?
I think we pretty much covered it all.
Use them.
Yeah.
You use them and love them.
Well, I to be fair, I had no idea. Usually you'll use the classic ogres and like whatever for your little bads, your kobolds, the one I always tell you to talk to. Like, you always use those. These ones are ones that I don't see ever or often enough in my mind.
I won't use them in a campaign unless the point is to fucking use them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is not a... Oh, by the way, you'll run into an odd Yugoloth in my campaign, or, hey, a demon pops up to make a deal, right? Or a devil, and like, oh, the Fae are dicking about in the next village over. No, Slaadi they're a fucking issue. It's like, I don't bring in a lich until I'm going to use the lich.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. All right, so that's all for our conversation on Slaadi in 5th edition. Make sure that you subscribe or follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future. Next week, we'll be looking into some of the dynamic aspects of the battlefield that have the potential to spice up the boring and simplistic combat of 5th edition.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website at www.itsamimic.com. A store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're gonna get.
This time you got a knot of toads.
Knot of toads.
Knot of toads.
Again, I'm gonna make a sweet, like, tavern. Just the naughty
toad. They're going to be spelled K-N-O-T-T-Y.
We do not slod shame on this podcast.
We don't slot shame. Yeah.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Sound check.
I like to make noises with my mouth hole.
Check 1, 2.
You guys are
off. Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me.
Okay, see you next time.